Lucas Jones was the kind of man the world envied. Handsome, wealthy, and heir to one of the largest resort chains in the country, he had everything many people dreamed of. Yet, Lucas was tired. His nights were filled with lavish parties, surrounded by people dazzled by his wealth, but an inexplicable emptiness seemed to grow within him. He wondered what had changed. He'd always had everything: fleeting romances, exotic cars, a private jet, and more money than he could spend in a lifetime. But lately, none of it seemed to fill the void he felt. Something was missing, something he had never known he needed. It was another night at one of his resorts. The hall was packed with elegant people, loud music reverberated, and champagne flowed endlessly. Despite the luxury and extravagance, Lucas felt out of place. Leaning against the bar, he stared at the glass of champagne in his hand as if searching for answers in its golden bubbles. "Lucas, you should be enjoying life. Why the long face?" asked Richard, his best friend and business partner, slapping him on the shoulder to get his attention. Lucas sighed. "Maybe because none of this makes sense." "I don't know, Richard." Richard raised an eyebrow, almost incredulous. "Are you crazy? Man, you've got everything. Look around. Money, women, cars. What more could you want?" Lucas just shrugged, offering no response. He stood up, leaving the glass on the counter, and headed for the balcony. The sound of waves crashing on the shore was like a distant melody, muffled by the relentless beat of electronic music echoing through the hall. Richard wasn't ready to give up. "See that gorgeous woman over there checking you out? Go talk to her. I'm sure she'll cheer you up." Lucas followed his friend's gaze. The woman was stunning, no doubt, but he felt no desire to approach her. "Not tonight, man. Not tonight," he replied with a weak smile. That night, for the first time in a long while, Lucas returned to his room alone. The space was luxurious, with a massive bed, breathtaking ocean views, and furniture worthy of a design magazine. But as he lay down, he realized something that scared him. Even amidst all this luxury, he felt profoundly empty. The next morning, Lucas was back to his routine. During a meeting with his team, he was introduced to a new project: the acquisition of Sunnyvale Ranch, a rural property with significant potential to become another luxury resort. The presentation was detailed, filled with charts, maps, and images of the location. Sarah, his assistant, displayed photos of the property on a large screen. The ranch boasts breathtaking landscapes, with the potential to attract a sophisticated clientele. The local workers are simple and dedicated, which could ease the transition. As the photos rolled by, something caught Lucas's attention. Among the images was a photo of the ranch workers. His eyes lingered on one woman. She had a slightly tired expression, but there was something about her face that captivated him. She seemed real, unpretentious, without any masks or artifices. Lucas felt a pang in his chest, something he couldn't explain. "Lucas?" Sarah called, interrupting his thoughts. "What do you think of the project?" Lucas blinked a few times before answering. "It's interesting, but we're not closing the deal just yet. I want to visit the site before we move forward." The room fell silent. Sarah looked at him, confused. "But Mr. Jones, the acquisition has already been approved by everyone. You've never wanted to visit a property before buying it." Lucas straightened in his chair, adopting a firm tone. "That changes today. I want to understand what we're buying before we destroy it." No one dared to question him. Dressed in simple clothes and a battered hat, Lucas Jones stepped off an old bus that stopped in front of Sunny Acres Ranch. The country air was different, fresh and pure, so unlike the enclosed, luxurious environments he was used to. He carried a small backpack and managed a humble smile, trying to convince himself he was ready for his new identity. As he passed through the ranch's wooden gate, he spotted Logan, the foreman. A burly man with a thick mustache and a suspicious gaze, Logan leaned against a fence, watching Lucas as if he already knew the newcomer wouldn't last long. "Hi, I'm Luke. I'm looking for work," Lucas said, trying to sound casual. "Luke, huh? Well, let's see what you can do." Logan replied with a mocking laugh. He crossed his arms and sized Lucas up from head to toe. The work here's tough. You think you can handle it? You look strong, but have you worked on a ranch before? He asked doubtfully. Lucas hesitated for a moment, but memories of his family's ranch flooded his mind. His childhood days spent wandering the fields, watching the ranch hands at work. Though he had never done the labor himself, he thought observing it might have taught him enough to fake it. Yes, I worked on a ranch when I was younger, he lied, his voice steady with confidence. I know I can handle it. Logan scratched his chin, weighing the response. That's what you say, but talk's easy. I need to test you, he said in a calm but challenging tone. Lucas was led to a large, dimly lit barn stacked with feed bags. Inside, Logan pointed to the bags and explained, There are 50 sacks here. I want you to load them all onto that truck outside. Then, clean the stables. Let's see if you're cut out for this. Lucas looked at the sacks. Each one seemed to weigh a ton. He almost gave up right then, but something inside him urged him to press on. Maybe it was pride, or maybe it was the desire to prove to himself that he was more than just a spoiled billionaire heir. Rolling up his sleeves, he got to work. Sweat dripped down Lucas's face as he carried sack after sack. His hands, used to the soft touch of crystal glasses and luxury car steering wheels, now burned from the rough texture of the feed bags. When he finally finished, he sat down for a moment, breathing heavily. It's not over yet, Luke, Logan said with a sly grin. The stables are waiting. Lucas dragged himself to the stables where the strong smell and the filth made him gag. He grabbed a shovel and began cleaning, thinking about how time seemed to stretch endlessly. Meanwhile, Logan stood by, laughing at the rookie's lack of skill. When Lucas finally finished the tasks, he was exhausted, filthy, and utterly disheveled. Logan approached him with a satisfied smile. You worked hard, the foreman said, giving Lucas a firm pat on the shoulder. I'll approve you. Looks like you need a change of scenery and you'll find it here. The folks who work here are good people, and Miss Elvira is like a mother to everyone. Lucas forced a smile. Every muscle in his body ached, but Logan's approval was a small step toward keeping his plan on track. While Logan and Lucas talked, Mary watched from a distance. A young woman with sharp eyes and her hair tied in a messy bun, she exuded a quiet strength. Standing next to her was Alicia, her 9-year-old daughter, clutching a patchwork doll with one arm mended. Alicia, naturally curious, couldn't hide her interest in the new worker. Mom, who is he? She asked, pointing at Lucas. A new helper, sweetie, Mary replied, keeping her eyes on Lucas. But don't stare. It's rude. Alicia, however, wasn't one to follow rules easily. She continued staring at Lucas, wrinkling her nose as if trying to figure him out. He looks strange, Alicia whispered to her mom. Mary chuckled softly and tousled her daughter's hair. Leave the man alone. I'm sure he's trying his best. As she watched Lucas struggle to stay upright after the grueling test, Mary felt something unexpected, a warm feeling in her chest, a mix of curiosity and sympathy. But she quickly pushed the thoughts aside. She had enough problems to deal with, and besides, she didn't trust strangers. Later, as the sun began to set and a gentle breeze swept across the ranch, Lucas walked toward the makeshift quarters Logan had prepared for him. His steps were slow, his muscles aching from the heavy labor. Then, on the path, he crossed paths with Mary and Alicia. When their eyes met, Lucas felt his heart skip a beat. It's her, the woman from the photo, he thought, immediately recognizing the face that had intrigued him during the project presentation. He didn't know what this unexpected feeling was, but something about it felt different, as if all the exhaustion of the day faded for a moment. Alicia, with her innocent curiosity, broke the silence. She looked at Lucas with wide eyes, clearly analyzing his sorry state. You're so dirty, the girl commented bluntly, pointing at the mud stains on his clothes and the dust covering his face. Lucas laughed, adjusting his hat to hide his embarrassment. Yeah, looks like I've got a lot to learn around here. Mary tried to hold back her laughter, but ended up letting a smile escape. If you really want to work here, you'll need more than strength, she said with a lightly teasing tone. Patience helps too. Lucas, surprised by Mary's direct response, replied with a sincere smile. I'll remember that. Sounds like good advice. Alicia, still gazing at Lucas with her curious eyes, tilted her head to the side. You talk funny, she said innocently. Mary looked visibly embarrassed and pulled her daughter closer. Sorry, she's just very curious. It's no problem, Lucas replied, still laughing. I guess I am a little different. He hesitated for a moment before deciding to introduce himself. I'm Luke. I just started here. Mary tilted her head slightly, as if assessing his words. Then, with a friendly gesture, she replied, I'm Mary, and this is my daughter, Alicia. Alicia waved excitedly. Hi, Uncle Luke. Nice to meet you both, Lucas said, trying to keep his composure. He felt something strange in his chest, a mix of nervousness and curiosity. Welcome to the ranch, Mary said with a polite smile. I'm sure we'll see each other around. As Mary and Alicia walked away, Lucas stood still for a moment, watching them. He couldn't shake the thought that Mary was different from any other woman he had ever met. There was something genuine about her, something he couldn't find in his world of luxury and superficiality. Mary, on the other hand, glanced back briefly, her heart unsettled for reasons she couldn't explain. There's something about him, she thought, something out of place. He didn't seem like just another worker passing through the ranch, but she brushed the thought aside, convincing herself it was just her imagination. As they walked back home, Alicia, still full of energy, held her mother's hand and said, He's funny, isn't he? I think I'm going to like Uncle Luke. Mary laughed and tousled her daughter's hair. He seems nice. Let's see if he can handle the ranch's pace. Alicia giggled and, with the simplicity of a child, replied, He'll be fine. I'm going to help him. Mary smiled but said nothing. Deep down, she knew the new worker was different. Who are you, Luke? She wondered as the golden horizon of the ranch illuminated the end of another day. On his way to the quarters, Lucas couldn't get Mary out of his mind. Her simplicity, the honesty in her gestures and gaze, it all seemed like a reality so far removed from everything he knew. For the first time in a long while, he felt disconnected from his own facade. Here, as Luke, he had the chance to be someone else. When he finally reached his quarters, he collapsed onto the makeshift bed, staring up at the wooden ceiling. Mary, he murmured, lost in thought. Who are you? And why do I feel like I need to know more about your life? The day had been exhausting, but something inside him was beginning to awaken. He knew this journey was just starting, and that the woman from the photo, now so real and close, would be an essential part of everything to come. Minutes before drifting off to sleep, Lucas's mind wandered back to his life at the resort, the grand parties, private jet trips, luxury cars, and women always around him. It all felt so distant now, so empty. None of those glamorous moments compared to this new, unexpected feeling he had experienced looking into Mary's eyes or hearing Alicia's spontaneous laughter. For the first time, something real had touched his heart, and he wasn't sure if he was ready to face it. In the days that followed, Lucas continued adapting to ranch life. Logan made sure to give him the toughest jobs, while the other workers watched, laughing and making comments. Mary, however, remained reserved but always kind. She helped him when she could, offering tips and guidance. Alicia, on the other hand, loved finding ways to chat with the new worker, asking questions and playfully pointing out his mistakes. Despite the challenges, Lucas felt like he was beginning to find something there. He didn't yet know what it was, but for the first time in years, the emptiness inside him seemed to be fading. It was a hot afternoon, and Lucas, or Luke as everyone called him, was locked in a personal battle with hay bales. His mission seemed simple, stack them neatly, but the task was proving to be a real challenge. Sweat dripped down his face as he struggled to balance the bales with his trembling hands. No matter how hard he tried, some of them stubbornly tumbled to the ground. "Damn," he muttered as one of the bales fell on his foot. Biting back the pain, he crouched down to clean up the mess. That's when Alicia appeared. The little girl watched Lucas curiously, tilting her head as if trying to figure out what he was doing. "Uncle Luke, why can't you get it right?" she asked, her voice filled with genuine curiosity but softened by her innocent smile. Lucas froze for a moment, caught off guard by the girl's frankness. Turning to face her, he tried to mask his embarrassment with a sheepish smile. "Because I'm a little clumsy," he admitted. Alicia giggled, clearly amused by his honesty. "My mom says if you try hard enough, you'll get it," she said matter-of-factly. Mary appeared moments later carrying a bucket of feed. She paused at the sight of the scene, her face lighting up with a warm smile. "Looks like you're being evaluated by an expert," she teased, glancing from Alicia to Lucas. Lucas laughed, though he felt something stir inside him. It was the first time he'd seen someone smile so genuinely. There was no pretense, no hidden agenda, just a simple, radiant moment of lightness. "Well, if I pass Alicia's evaluation, I think I can handle any test," he replied, adjusting his hat in an attempt to sound nonchalant. Mary shook her head, laughing softly. "She's tough but fair," she said, setting the bucket down on the ground. Alicia ran over to her, grabbing her hand. "Do you think Uncle Luke will get the bales stacked without messing up this time, Mom?" Alicia asked, her wide eyes darting between Lucas and Mary with eager anticipation. Mary looked at Lucas with a playful glint in her eyes. "Well, I think he deserves another chance," she said, winking at Alicia. Lucas felt his heart skip a beat but quickly disguised his nervousness. "I promise, next time I'll do better," he said, lifting one of the bales again, this time with extra care. As the days passed, Lucas began to grow closer to Mary and Alicia. He helped with the farm chores despite often making comical mistakes, like trying to milk a cow and ending up with a face full of milk. "You're the clumsiest worker I've ever seen," Mary said, wiping Lucas's face with a cloth. "But at least you've got the right attitude." Evenings on the farm were peaceful, with simple dinners and conversations around the table. Lucas learned about Mary's dreams of opening a community school and the struggles she faced as a single mother. "My biggest fear is that Alicia won't have the opportunities she deserves," Mary confessed, her eyes on her daughter playing on the floor. Lucas felt a pang in his chest, but kept his true identity a secret. A sunny day at Sunny Acres Ranch. While Lucas wrestled with organizing hay bales once again, Mary decided to stay nearby to help him. Alicia, meanwhile, sat under the shade of a nearby tree, playing with her doll. "So, Luke, where were you before you came here?" Mary asked casually, resting her hands on her hips. Lucas knew he had to tread carefully. He couldn't reveal his true background. "Oh, a big city, but I never really liked it there," he replied, trying to sound convincing. "I wanted a quieter place, somewhere I could breathe and learn new things." Mary gave him a sideways glance as if trying to decode his words. "Well, you'll get plenty of quiet here, but also a lot of hard work. Nothing comes for free around here," she said, her tone blending honesty with empathy. Lucas smiled, but her words weighed on him. He was used to a life where everything was handed to him. Yet here, every small accomplishment seemed to come from genuine effort. "You seem to handle it all so well," he said, shifting the focus to Mary. "Raising Alicia on your own and taking care of the farm. It must be tough." Mary sighed but kept her smile. "Sometimes it is, but Alicia is my strength. When I see her laugh, I forget the problems. And the farm, well, it's my second home. Everyone helps out here. Miss Elvira always says we're like family." Lucas felt a surge of admiration for Mary. She was far stronger and more inspiring than anyone he had met in his luxurious world. After a while, Mary had to return to her work. "Well, Luke, good luck with the hay bales. And remember, patience," she said, taking Alicia by the hand. "Thanks, Uncle Luke," Alicia said, waving enthusiastically as they walked away. Lucas stood there for a moment, watching them leave. Something about the simplicity of that scene touched him deeply. It wasn't just Mary's physical beauty that caught his attention, but her strength, humor, and the love she showed for her daughter. He picked up another bale and continued stacking, but his thoughts were far away. For the first time, Lucas felt there was something more valuable than cars, parties, and luxury trips. There was something here, on this farm, in this woman and her child, that he wanted to understand better. When night fell and Lucas finally returned to his quarters, he felt the exhaustion in his body, but his mind was restless. Lying on the improvised bed, staring at the wooden ceiling, he listened to the sounds of the farm filling the silence. His thoughts wandered between images of Mary and memories of his previous life. He thought about the parties, the women, the cars, and the private jet trips. He remembered how everyone around him always flattered him, but never made him feel anything real. All of that, which once seemed so valuable, now felt hollow. None of that compares to what I'm feeling now, he thought. Here. This is real. With that thought, Lucas closed his eyes, feeling for the first time in a long while that his life was starting to make sense. The sun had barely risen when Lucas was startled awake by firm knocks on the door of his quarters. Sitting up groggily on his makeshift bed, he recognized the deep voice of Logan, the farm's foreman, calling out to him. "Luke, get up. Miss Elvira wants to speak with you," Logan said firmly, leaving no room for questions. A chill ran down Lucas's spine. He quickly got up, threw on a worn shirt and jeans, and slipped into his scuffed boots. Running a hand through his hair to make himself look more presentable, he stepped out and headed toward the farmhouse. The house was both imposing and inviting. Made of sturdy wood, with wide porches and surrounded by fruit trees, it felt like the heart of the farm. Climbing the steps to the entrance, his heart raced as he was guided to Miss Elvira's office by one of the staff. Hesitant, he stepped inside, feeling slightly overwhelmed. Miss Elvira sat behind a robust wooden desk, her expression calm but commanding. She was a woman of serene demeanor, her gray hair neatly styled, and her sharp eyes seemed to see right through him. "Lucas, have a seat," she said, motioning to a chair across from her desk. Her use of his real name instantly put him on edge. As he sat, she got straight to the point. "Lucas, are you enjoying the work here?" The question sounded innocent, but her tone suggested otherwise. Lucas hesitated briefly, carefully choosing his words. "Yes, Miss Elvira. It's different, harder than the work I used to do, but I'm enjoying it." Miss Elvira clasped her hands on the desk and fixed him with a steady gaze. "I want to know, has your perspective on life in the countryside changed?" Lucas felt a wave of unease wash over him. Her tone was laden with meaning, but he wasn't sure where this conversation was headed. "Yes, ma'am," he replied cautiously. "I've learned a lot about how things work here." She leaned forward slightly, her eyes locking onto his. "Lucas, did you really think I'd let someone work here without looking into their background?" she asked with a disarming calm. Before he could respond, she continued, "You wouldn't do that at your resort, would you?" Lucas's throat tightened and he felt the ground shift beneath his feet. The plan he had thought was foolproof had been uncovered. He didn't know whether to deny everything, apologize, or flee. "Miss Elvira, I can explain," he stammered, but she raised a hand to stop him. "There's no need to justify yourself, son," she said, her tone softening. "When you arrived, I sensed there was something different about you. It wasn't hard to figure out who you really are. But what intrigued me was why someone like you would want to blend in here." He lowered his gaze, feeling exposed. Miss Elvira continued, now with a maternal gentleness in her voice. "You're welcome to work here and learn what this life is about. But I want you to be careful, not with the work itself, but with people, with their feelings." Lucas's heart raced as her words struck a chord. He knew exactly who she was talking about, Mary. Her image flashed through his mind, her warm smile, her unshakable strength. In that moment, he realized just how much he cared for her. "I didn't mean to deceive anyone," Lucas said, meeting Miss Elvira's gaze. "I just wanted to understand what it means to live like this without all the things I've always had. And please don't reveal my identity to anyone. I promise to be a good worker. Miss Elvira studied him in silence for a long moment, as if weighing every word he had said. Lucas felt the weight of her gaze, almost as if she were looking into his soul. Finally, she spoke with a serene smile. Don't worry, son. Your secret is safe with me. But remember, everyone here has their own battles. Respect them. Lucas exhaled deeply, feeling some of the tension ease. Thank you, Miss Elvira. I promise I won't let you down. She nodded and gestured toward the door. You'd better get back to work, Lucas. The day has only just begun. As he stepped out of the house, the fresh breeze of the countryside brushed against his face. Walking back toward the barn, his mind was racing. He thought about Miss Elvira's words and what they meant. She was right. He was becoming more entangled than he had planned, especially when it came to Mary. He glanced around at the workers, at the simplicity of the farm, and realized how much his perspective was shifting. The luxury of his former life felt increasingly distant. Yet one question lingered in his mind. How would Mary react if she ever found out the truth about him? Lucas sighed, forcing himself to focus on the present. For now, all he could do was continue working, learning, and, most importantly, respecting the people around him. Deep down, though, he knew he wasn't just here to learn about life on the farm. He was learning about himself, and about love. And most of all, he was learning about Mary. Lucas had spent weeks at Sunny Acres Ranch, immersing himself in rural life and, more importantly, getting to know the people who called the place home. Gradually, he began to understand the community and the depth of its roots. The stories shared over dinner or during work were rich in meaning and brimming with love for the land. The workers didn't see the ranch as merely a source of income. It was a part of who they were. Lucas knew the original plan to transform the ranch into a luxury resort would destroy all of that. He felt torn between his role as a businessman and his newfound understanding of the importance of this place. Yet he also knew time was running out. Sooner or later, he'd have to return to his life of luxury and face the reality that his disguise couldn't last forever. One of the most anticipated traditions among the residents was the annual Harvest Festival. It was a time for celebration, with music, dancing, and plenty of food. Lucas, or Luke, as everyone called him, was helping set up tables when Alicia appeared. "Uncle Luke, are you going to dance with us tonight?" she asked, her eyes shining with excitement. Lucas smiled. "I'll try. But if I step on your toes, promise you won't get mad?" Alicia giggled. "I'll teach you. It's easy." Mary, standing nearby, watched the interaction with a small smile. There was something about Lucas she couldn't quite put her finger on. He was kind, hard-working, and seemed genuine, but at the same time, she sensed there was something he wasn't sharing. Whenever she tried to push the thought aside, something new would arise to reinforce her suspicion. During the festival, Miss Elvira called Lucas aside to deal with a minor issue involving a food delivery for the event. As he stepped away to resolve it, his hidden cell phone rang, a call from an executive at his luxury resort chain in the Maldives. "Yes, everything's fine here. No, it's not time to move forward with the project yet. I need more time to assess the situation," he said. Unbeknownst to him, Alicia, curious as always, had been playing nearby and overheard the conversation. When Lucas ended the call, she appeared at his side. "Uncle Luke, why do you talk like that? Are you rich?" she asked with the innocent bluntness of a child. Lucas froze. Before he could think of an answer, Mary appeared, having overheard Alicia's question and noticed the expensive phone in Lucas's hand. Something clicked in her mind. "Who are you, really?" she asked, her tone serious as she crossed her arms and stared directly at him. Lucas felt his heart race. The moment he'd been dreading had arrived, and he knew he couldn't lie to Mary anymore. "Mary, He hesitated, but knew he had to be honest. "My real name is Lucas Montenegro. I own a chain of resorts. I came here because I wanted to understand how you live, how this community works, before turning this ranch into a development." Mary's eyes widened in disbelief. The weight of his words hung heavy in the air. "You came here to deceive us? To spy on us? I knew something was off, but I never imagined this." No, Mary, it's not like that, Lucas said, his voice desperate. I didn't want to hurt anyone. I wanted to understand, to do something different. And after meeting you all, I realized this place is so much more than just land. I want to find a way to respect that. She shook her head, visibly shaken. Lucas, you lied to all of us. To me. How do you expect me to trust you now? Mary, I never wanted to hurt you, he said softly, almost pleading. Please, just hear me out. But Mary took a step back. I don't want to hear it. You don't understand what you've done. Leave, Lucas. The finality in Mary's voice hit Lucas like a blow. He wanted to say more, but he knew it wasn't the time. The curious stares of the other residents began turning toward him, sensing something was wrong. Lucas left the festival, his head hung low, feeling more lost than ever. As he walked back to his quarters, each step felt heavier than the last. He knew he had hurt Mary, and feared he might never be able to fix it. Back in his quarters, Lucas sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the phone still in his hand. He could easily call his team and proceed with the original plan. But the thought of destroying this place and further hurting these people now felt unbearable. That night, Lucas couldn't sleep. His thoughts swirled around Mary, the pain and disappointment in her eyes. He thought of Alicia, so innocent yet already starting to grasp the complexities of the world. And he thought of himself, of how much he had changed since arriving here. He realized he was tired of living a superficial life, where everything was easy, but nothing was real. For the first time, he wanted to do something meaningful, something that wasn't just about profit, but about genuine impact. But the question that haunted him was, had he already done too much damage to make things right? Elsewhere on the ranch, Mary sat under the shade of a tree, her thoughts a storm of emotions. She couldn't understand how Lucas could have done this. Before his revelation, she had reluctantly come to terms with the feelings that had grown since their first encounter. Feelings she had tried to ignore, but that had only deepened with each conversation, each shared smile. But now, everything seemed to have crumbled. They were from completely different worlds, and worse, he had deceived her. The man she had started to fall for wasn't who he said he was, and that realization made her heart ache even more. Back in his luxurious life, Lucas Jones felt like a stranger in his own world. The glamorous parties, private jet trips, and superficial encounters with his elite social circle no longer brought him any joy. For the first time, he understood what could fill the emptiness he had always felt, his love for Mary. Now he knew that feeling. Thinking of her made his heart race, but it also hurt knowing he had let her down. Lucas spent hours in his penthouse, gazing at the city through the window, a forgotten glass of whiskey in his hand. He knew he couldn't abandon his business life entirely. His resort empire supported thousands of families and couldn't simply stop. But something within him had changed, and he couldn't ignore it. He decided that if Mary loved him the way he hoped, they could build a life together. He imagined a future where she and Alicia lived in one of his resorts, enjoying comfort, security, and everything they had ever needed. To Lucas, it seemed like a good plan, almost perfect. But a persistent doubt haunted him. Would Mary accept it? Moreover, he knew he needed to make amends for the mistakes he had made regarding the ranch. It wasn't just about Mary anymore. It was also about the community and everything he had learned there. Lucas made a decision. He would completely redesign the resort project to preserve the essence of the ranch and benefit its residents. Days later, Lucas returned to Sunny Acres Ranch. But this time, he wasn't in disguise. He wore a simple shirt, but his posture and presence made it clear who he really was. As he arrived, he was met with wary glances. Some residents whispered among themselves, while others openly stared. Logan, the foreman, was the first to speak. So, the boss decided to show up again? What now? Gonna buy everything and kick us out? Lucas took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. Logan, I know I made mistakes, but I'm here to fix them. Please, give me a chance to explain. Logan scoffed but shrugged. Not my decision. Talk to Miss Elvira and the folks. Miss Elvira organized a meeting with the ranch residents in the main hall of the property. Lucas knew it would be a difficult moment, but he was prepared. As he entered the room, he saw Mary at the back, with Alicia by her side. Her gaze was cold and distant, and it hurt more than he had expected. "Good morning, everyone," Lucas began, his voice steady but tinged with vulnerability. "I know I don't deserve your trust after what I did. I came here disguised, trying to understand your lives, and I ended up hurting people who didn't deserve it, especially Mary." He paused, looking directly at her. Mary avoided his gaze but didn't leave the room. "I'm here because I want to make things right," Lucas continued. "The original plan to turn the ranch into a luxury resort has been canceled. Instead, I want to propose a project that preserves the history of this place and brings benefits to all of you." Murmurs began to ripple through the room, but Lucas raised his hand to ask for silence. "The idea is to build a school here for the community's children, and also a cultural center to preserve the stories and traditions you've shared with me. The historic areas of the ranch will be maintained, and tourism will be developed sustainably with everyone's involvement." When the meeting ended, the residents were divided. Some were impressed by Lucas's sincerity in the new project, while others still harbored resentment. Mary was one of the last to leave, and Lucas seized the opportunity to approach her. "Mary, can we talk?" he asked, his voice low and hesitant. She crossed her arms, staring at him firmly. "You already said what you wanted to all of us. What more is there to say?" Lucas stepped closer. "I need to tell you something personal, not as a businessman, but as Lucas, the man you knew. Mary, I fell in love with you. From the very first moment, I felt something special. I didn't plan this, but it happened, and I can't imagine my life without you and Alicia." Mary let out a humorless laugh, shaking her head. "You think just because you're rich and powerful, you can say pretty words and everything will be fine? Lucas, you lied to me, pretended to be someone you weren't. How can I trust you again?" "I know I made mistakes," he said, sincerity shining in his eyes. "But I'm willing to do whatever it takes to earn your trust again. If you give me a chance, I'll prove I'm telling the truth." Mary studied him for a long moment, her gaze softening slightly. "Lucas, you come from a world completely different from mine. I'm just a simple woman, raising my daughter the best I can. I don't know if I can be part of your life." Before Lucas could respond, Alicia came running over. "Mommy, is Uncle Luke staying here again?" she asked, her eyes bright with anticipation. Mary sighed, but before she could say anything, Lucas crouched to meet Alicia's eye level. "I'd like to stay, Alicia, but only if your mom lets me." The little girl looked at her mother, who rolled her eyes. "Let's take it slow, Lucas," Mary said. "You've got a long way to go." Lucas smiled, feeling a spark of hope. "I won't give up." In the days that followed, Lucas began implementing the new project for the ranch. He worked alongside the residents, gradually earning the trust of those who still doubted his intentions. Mary, though hesitant, started to see the sincerity in his actions. Slowly, she allowed Lucas to get closer again, though cautiously. One sunny and warm Saturday morning, Lucas Jones woke up in his penthouse with his heart racing and a decision firmly made. Today is the day. I can't live without Mary anymore. The distance and doubt had been consuming him, and it was time to act. He put on simple clothes, grabbed the keys to his truck, and set off on the long drive to Sunny Acres Ranch. As he drove, his mind was filled with memories. Mary's smile, Alicia's infectious laughter, and the lessons he had learned on that farm. He knew he wasn't perfect, but he wanted to try. He wanted a life with her. When Lucas arrived at the ranch, the earthy scent and the sound of birds greeted him like old friends. He parked his truck near Mary's house and stepped out, feeling adrenaline coursing through his veins. Each step toward the door felt heavier, but he didn't hesitate. Lucas knocked on the door and waited. The sound of hurried footsteps came from inside, and then the door opened. Mary stood there in a simple dress, her hair slightly messy, but to him, she looked like the most beautiful woman in the world. "Lucas?" Mary said, surprised to see him. Her expression was a mix of confusion and restrained emotion. Before Mary could say anything else, Lucas took a deep breath and, without thinking twice, began to speak. I know I'm not perfect. I know we have a lot to learn about each other, but Mary, I love you. I've loved you since the moment I saw your picture, even before I met you. It was you who brought me here, who showed me this new world and taught me things I never imagined. Mary stood still, absorbing every word. Her eyes began to fill with tears, but she couldn't interrupt him. Lucas stepped closer, his gaze locked on hers. I know we haven't even dated yet, but I don't need that to know how I feel. I want to build a life with you. I want a family, Mary. Me, you, and Alicia. I want to be part of your life. Mary, will you marry me? The silence that followed felt like an eternity. Mary blinked a few times, the tears finally streaming down her face. She covered her mouth with her hand, unable to believe what she was hearing. Lucas, on the other hand, stood waiting with his heart in his hands, fearing he had been too impulsive. Suddenly, Mary stepped forward and hugged him tightly, burying her face in his chest. He felt her arms wrap around him, and the warmth of that embrace melted all his insecurities. Yes, Mary whispered, her voice muffled by the hug. Then she looked up at him. Yes, Lucas, I'll marry you. He smiled, feeling immense relief mixed with joy. You've just made me the happiest man in the world, he said, gently cupping her face. On that sunny Saturday under the humble roof of Mary's house, Lucas felt he had finally found what he had always been searching for, a home built on love and sincerity. They still had much to learn together, but they were ready to take the first step as a family. And so a new chapter began for Lucas, Mary, and Alicia, a chapter full of challenges but also filled with love, hope, and promises of a bright future. We hope you enjoyed this story filled with emotions and twists. If you liked it and want to follow more engaging stories like this, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel. Every narrative is a new journey, and we're here to surprise you. Leave your comment letting us know your thoughts and share your suggestions for future stories. By the time millionaire Clara realized it, it was too late. Her best friend had run away with... Claire Carter was the embodiment of glamour and elegance. At just 28 years old, she stood out as the marketing director of one of the largest cosmetics companies in the country, Luminous Beauty, founded by her father, Henry Carter. That night, like many others, Claire was the center of attention at a luxurious event hosted by the company. The ballroom was breathtaking, with crystal chandeliers illuminating the space and spotlights highlighting every detail of the tables adorned with white roses and silk tablecloths. At the heart of it all, Claire walked gracefully in an exclusive red dress, drawing admiring and even envious looks. Around her, friends and admirers gathered, praising her beauty and the innovative campaigns that had propelled Luminous Beauty to the top. In a corner of the room, Henry, her father, observed her with a stern expression. A pragmatic and demanding businessman, he valued results above all else. Beside him stood Laura Mendez, Claire's friend and the company's financial director, a charismatic woman with sweet words and a smile that concealed her true ambition. Impatient, Henry approached Claire. With a touch on her shoulder, he excused them from the surrounding guests. "Claire, can we talk?" he asked in a tone that sounded more like an order. With no alternative, she followed her father to a more private corner. Henry wasted no time. "Do you think you're here just to parade around? This event isn't just a glamour show. It's about the expansion of Luminous Beauty. We need you genuinely involved in the business, Claire." Claire tried to maintain her composure, but her father's firm voice always rattled her. "I'm the marketing director, Dad. My campaigns have placed Luminous Beauty at the top. Isn't that enough?" Henry sighed, impatient. "That's just the tip of the iceberg. If you don't stop blindly trusting Laura and start paying attention to the numbers, you might find that pretty campaigns don't save a company from financial trouble." Without waiting for a response, Henry walked away, leaving Claire confused and uncomfortable. Before she could pull herself together, Laura appeared as usual with a reassuring smile. "He never changes, does he? Laura said, handing Claire a champagne glass. Don't worry. I'll handle the hard part while you shine for the public. That's what we do best together. Claire smiled, grateful for the support, unaware that behind that smile lay hidden motives. Back in the ballroom, Claire resumed her role as the star of the evening, posing for photographers and smiling at the guests. In the days following the luxurious event, Claire Carter barely had time to rest. Between meetings and marketing commitments, her schedule was packed, but something strange began to catch her attention. Urgent messages from suppliers, bounced checks, and unexpected billing emails started piling up. She trusted Laura Mendez completely, her friend and the head of finances at Luminous Beauty, but these notifications began raising suspicions. Even so, Claire believed everything would be resolved. Laura always had an explanation for any problem. One cloudy morning, Claire was in her office reviewing a new advertising campaign when her assistant burst in, looking pale and holding a tablet. "Claire, you need to see this," he said, his voice trembling. On the screen was an article from a financial blog revealing that Laura Mendez had transferred millions from Luminous Beauty's accounts to offshore accounts. The news went viral within minutes, and shareholders began calling, demanding answers. Claire felt the air leave her lungs. With trembling hands, she tried calling Laura, but her phone was off. Desperate, Claire rushed to her father Henry's office, only to find a man colder and more distant than ever. "I warned you, Claire. I told you that you needed to take control. Now look where your blind trust has led us," he said, throwing a report onto the desk. The report confirmed it. Luminous Beauty was on the brink of bankruptcy. Laura Mendez had disappeared with almost all the company's funds, leaving Claire as the sole person accountable to the shareholders and the law. "Dad, I didn't know," Claire tried to explain, but Henry interrupted her with a cold glare. "I always knew you weren't ready for this world. All you care about is appearances and trivialities, Claire. Now deal with the consequences of your mistakes. Pay back every cent of this debt and leave my company. If we ever recover the lost money, I'll return it to you. Until then, you're on your own." Henry's words cut like a knife to Claire's heart. She left the office feeling like everything she had built was crumbling around her. In the months that followed, Claire faced a storm of lawsuits and debts. The luxurious house she had lived in was auctioned off, her cars were seized, and her accounts were frozen. Her so-called friends vanished, like rats fleeing a sinking ship. With nowhere to go and little money left in her account, Claire was forced to rent a small apartment in a modest neighborhood. For the first time in her life, she was alone, without luxury or support. On her last night in the mansion, Claire sat on the floor of her empty bedroom, surrounded by boxes. In the dim light, she stared at a framed photo of herself and Laura, taken during the opening of an international branch of Luminous Beauty. With tears in her eyes, Claire murmured to herself, "How could I have been so naive?" She lay down on the cold floor, clutching the photo as the sound of rain pattered against the windows. It would be the last night Claire Carter lived as the heiress of an empire. Claire Carter had lost everything: her glamorous life, her friends, and even the trust of her father, Henry. The scandals surrounding the embezzlement at Luminous Beauty had left her completely shattered. The small apartment she had rented was in a neighborhood she barely knew. It was simple and functional: a basic kitchen with second-hand appliances, a sofa, a television, a small table in the corner, a modest bathroom, and a bedroom with a bed and a wardrobe. For Claire, it felt like the opposite of everything she once knew. But at that moment, it was the only place she could call home. That morning, Claire sat at the small table, staring blankly at her laptop screen. She was desperately searching for jobs, but none of her qualifications seemed enough without the financial backing of Luminous Beauty. Then, an ad on the screen caught her attention. "Earn money with flexibility. Become a rideshare driver." Claire laughed at herself. Just a few months ago, she didn't even drive her own car, always chauffeured by private drivers. Now she was considering transporting people to afford her next meal. But the little money she had saved was running out, and desperation overcame her pride. Without overthinking, she filled out the application and scheduled the vehicle inspection. There was just one problem: she no longer had a car. Her luxury vehicle had been repossessed by creditors. Claire picked up her phone and hesitated before dialing. The number belonged to an old acquaintance, Camilla, her distant cousin, and one of the few people who still spoke to her. "Camilla? It's Claire. I need a favor. Can I borrow your car for a while?" 2 days later, Claire was ready for her first day as a driver. She wore jeans and a simple shirt, clothes she hadn't worn in years, purchased from a discount store near her apartment. She got into Camilla's compact car and took a deep breath. The app pinged. Ride request. With her heart racing, Claire accepted the request. The pickup location was an office building in the downtown area. She drove carefully, trying to ignore the sweat on her hands. When the passenger got into the car, a young executive with headphones and eyes glued to his phone, Claire gave him a nervous smile and said, "Good morning." He simply nodded without looking up. Claire sighed and drove in silence, trying not to dwell on how far she had fallen from her previous life. Throughout the day, Claire faced unexpected situations. An elderly woman criticized her driving, while a hurried young man insisted she speed through traffic, ignoring the risks. In one particularly tense moment, a passenger complained about the air conditioning. Finally, when she parked for a break, Claire sat alone in the car, staring at her hands on the wheel. She felt humiliated, but a voice inside urged her to keep going. This wasn't just a way to make money. It was an opportunity to rebuild herself and prove she was more than the heiress she used to be. That evening, Claire parked in front of a small, popular restaurant known for being cheap and delicious. Exhausted, she used the money from her rides to buy her first decent meal in days. As she walked back to the car, she noticed a young man leaning against a nearby vehicle. He was casually dressed but had a warm, friendly smile. "Busy day?" he asked with a hint of sympathy. Claire hesitated for a moment. "You have no idea," she replied with a tired smile. He extended his hand. "I'm Ryan. I'm a driver too. If you ever need tips, I'm around." Claire shook his hand, surprised by his kindness. "I'm Claire, and it's, well, my first day." Ryan smiled. "Welcome to the club." In that moment, Claire felt something she hadn't experienced in weeks. Hope. Maybe, amid all the changes, she could find something new, something that made it all worthwhile. In the days that followed, Claire began adjusting to her routine as a driver. Although she still felt uneasy, the job offered her something she had never experienced before, the chance to hear real stories. Each passenger was their own universe, full of challenges, dreams, and struggles. One sunny morning, Claire accepted a ride request to the upscale neighborhood where she used to live. When she arrived, a man in an impeccable suit got into the car, his cologne filling the air. As soon as he sat down, he started a phone call. "I can't believe you let this happen!" he shouted at the person on the other end of the line. "I don't pay you to make such basic mistakes." Claire drove in silence, feeling a lump form in her throat. The man's authoritative voice and cold tone reminded her of her father, Henry. When he hung up, he looked at Claire through the rearview mirror. "Can you speed up? I'm late." Claire took a deep breath, fighting the urge to respond sarcastically. She simply nodded and kept driving. At the end of the ride, the man didn't thank her. He just left the car, leaving Claire alone with her thoughts. "Is this what I used to be?" she murmured to herself, a mix of sadness and relief washing over her. Later that afternoon, Claire received another request. When she arrived at the pickup location, Ryan was leaning against her car, smiling. "Claire, we need to stop meeting like this or people will think I'm stalking you." She laughed, the sound coming more easily than she expected. "Need a ride, Ryan? I thought you were a driver too." He pointed to the car beside hers. "I am, but my car broke down. Today, I'm just a passenger." During the ride, Ryan shared stories about his experiences as a driver. He was different from anyone Claire had met before. There was no pretense in his words, only honesty. Gradually, she felt more at ease in his presence. "And you, Claire? How did you end up in this world?" he asked casually. Claire hesitated. She wasn't ready to share her story with a stranger, no matter how friendly he seemed. "Let's just say I needed a change of pace," she replied, with a smile that concealed the truth. Ryan didn't push. He simply smiled back. Well, whatever the reason, I think you're on the right path. On another day, Claire accepted a short ride request. Mrs. Celine, an elderly woman with white hair and a kind gaze, got into the car carrying a bag full of fruit. "You're new to this, aren't you, dear?" she said as she settled into the back seat. Claire smiled, surprised by the observation. "Is it that obvious?" "A little," Mrs. Celine replied, laughing. "But that's okay. Life teaches us to adapt. Sometimes losing something can be the best thing that happens to us." Claire remained silent, reflecting on those words. When she dropped Mrs. Celine off at her home, the woman handed her an apple from the bag. "For your day, dear. And remember, strength lies in moving forward, even when everything seems lost." Claire thanked her, deeply moved. In that moment, she realized her job was more than a way to pay the bills. It was a lesson in life. That evening, Claire parked near the small apartment where she lived. Ryan was there, leaning against his car, scrolling through his phone. "We meet again," Claire said as she got out of the car. "It's destiny. Or maybe I just live in that building over there," he joked. They talked for a few minutes, and Ryan mentioned a meeting spot for rideshare drivers at a nearby cafe. "You should stop by. It's good to meet other drivers, share tips and stories." Claire hesitated, but eventually agreed. "Maybe I will. Thanks, Ryan." "Anytime, Claire," he replied, smiling before getting into his car. As Claire climbed the stairs to her apartment, she felt something new within her. For the first time in a long while, she felt a sense of control over her life. Maybe, she thought, this new path wasn't so bad after all. The following week, Claire accepted Ryan's invitation and showed up at the cafe where rideshare drivers often gathered. The place was simple, with wooden tables, a counter with coffee machines, and a chalkboard where the owners wrote funny messages. Ryan was at one of the tables chatting with other drivers. When he saw Claire, he stood up and greeted her with a warm smile. "I didn't think you'd come," he said. Claire shrugged, trying to appear casual. "I thought it might be nice to hear some stories. I need tips on surviving critical passengers." Ryan laughed. "Well, you're in the right place. We're experts at that here. Come on, I'll introduce you to everyone." Claire spent the evening listening to the other drivers share their stories. Some were funny, others frustrating, but the light-hearted tone of the conversation helped her relax for the first time in weeks. Ryan, sitting beside her, made clever and funny comments, but he also observed Claire closely. He could see that beneath her confident demeanor, there was a vulnerability she was trying to hide. As the group began to disperse, Ryan suggested, "Want to take a walk? There's a park nearby. I like to go there when I need to think." Claire hesitated but agreed. As they walked, they talked about trivial things, music, movies, even childhood memories. Then Ryan asked without hesitation, "Claire, have you always been a driver?" She laughed, surprised by the question. "Not exactly. My life was very different before this." "Sounds like there's a story there." He pressed gently but curiously. Claire stopped walking for a moment. She looked at the trees illuminated by the yellow glow of the streetlights and answered, "I used to be an heiress. Luminous Beauty. Have you heard of it?" Ryan raised his eyebrows in surprise. "Of course I have. You owned it?" "I did," Claire said with a wistful smile. "I lost everything. My partner betrayed me. Now I'm here, driving to pay the bills." Ryan didn't try to comfort her. Instead, he replied simply, "Then you must be stronger than you think." Claire looked at him, surprised by his response. "Why do you say that?" "Because you're here, starting over. Most people would have given up. But you didn't." Ryan's words touched something deep within Claire. For the first time, she felt that someone recognized her efforts without judging or underestimating her. A few days later, Ryan invited Claire out again. This time, it was for a food truck festival in the city. "You need to stop living just between rides and home," he said. "And I won't take no for an answer." At the festival, Claire laughed like she hadn't in a long time. Ryan was funny, full of stories, and seemed to have a natural talent for making her feel at ease. They stopped at an ice cream truck and Ryan ordered two strange flavors, insisting that Claire try them. "This looks awful," she said, eyeing the ice cream skeptically. "Trust me, I'm an expert in weird combinations." Claire took a bite and, to her surprise, loved it. "Okay, you were right." "I'm always right," he replied, winking. As they walked through the festival, Claire felt something different. It was a lightness she hadn't felt since her life had turned upside down. And as she looked at Ryan, she realized he was part of that. On the way home, they parked in front of Claire's building. Before getting out of the car, she turned to Ryan. "Thank you for today. I really needed this." "It was fun," he replied. "Maybe we can do it again sometime." For a moment, they sat in silence, just looking at each other. It was as if words weren't necessary. Ryan smiled, but before he could say anything, Claire looked away, feeling her heart race. "Good night, Ryan." "Good night, Claire." As Claire climbed the stairs, she realized she was smiling. Maybe, she thought, Ryan was more than just a friend. The thought scared her, but it also made her feel alive again. It was a clear night, but the city felt busy. Claire and Ryan had agreed to meet after their shifts for a quick coffee at a spot where drivers usually rested. They hadn't planned anything beyond that, but life, as always, seemed to have other ideas. Sitting at a table near the window, Claire stirred her cappuccino, while Ryan, arms crossed on the table, watched her. The cafe was nearly empty, with only a few people speaking softly in the background. "You look tired today," Ryan commented. Claire sighed, letting out a faint smile. "I think it's more mental than physical. Driving gives me too much time to think. And thinking, it's not always a good thing." "What do you think about?" he asked, his gaze steady. Claire hesitated. It wasn't easy to open up, but something about Ryan made her feel safe. "Everything I've lost, how naive I was, and—" She paused, searching for the words. "Who I am now. Sometimes I don't even know anymore." Ryan nodded as if he understood exactly what she meant. Losing something big does that to us, but sometimes it also helps us discover who we really are. "Who were you before, Claire?" She let out a short laugh, devoid of humor. "I was a woman who thought she had everything under control. But the truth is, I was just doing what everyone expected of me. The perfect heiress. Now, with nothing, I don't know." Ryan looked at her for a moment before responding. "Maybe who you really are is emerging now. It can be scary, but I think you're on the right path." Claire gave a small sideways smile, surprised at how easily Ryan always seemed to find the right words. Before she could respond, Ryan's phone buzzed on the table. He glanced at the screen and frowned. "A friend of mine needs help. His car broke down on a pretty remote road. He's the kind of guy who panics over everything." "Want me to take you there?" Claire offered suddenly. Ryan looked at her, surprised, but nodded. "That would be great. Are you sure?" Claire simply picked up her car keys and motioned for him to follow. The road was poorly lit, flanked by tall trees and an unusual silence. Claire drove carefully while Ryan gave her directions. "Why's your friend so far out here?" Claire asked, trying to break the tension in the quiet. Ryan shrugged. "He loves exploring random places, but he's not great at planning how to get back. He's a good guy, just kind of absent-minded." They found the broken-down car at a curve in the road. A young man with glasses was waving both hands, visibly relieved to see Ryan. "My hero!" the man exclaimed dramatically as he approached. "Michael, you really need to start checking your gas tank before heading out," Ryan replied with a tired smile. Claire stood by the car, watching as Ryan helped Michael arrange for a tow. Despite the light-hearted humor, Claire started to feel a slight unease. The road seemed quieter than it should have been. Suddenly, a noise came from the trees. Claire turned quickly, trying to find the source, but saw nothing. "Ryan," she called, her voice low. He noticed the tone in her voice and stepped closer, becoming alert. "What is it?" "I think I heard something over there." Claire pointed to the forest beside them. Before Ryan could respond, another sound came, louder this time. A figure emerged from the trees, and for a moment, Claire held her breath. It was a dog, skinny and scared. Ryan exhaled, relaxing. Just a dog, Claire. Looks like he's hungry. She laughed nervously. What a scare. I was already imagining the worst. Ryan approached the dog, who hesitated at first, but eventually allowed him to get close. Claire watched, captivated by Ryan's patience. Hey, buddy, Ryan said, petting the dog gently. Looks like you're all alone out here. Do you think he was abandoned? Claire asked, crouching next to Ryan. Probably. He glanced at Claire with a smile. I think we've got a new mission. With Michael on his way home in a taxi, Claire and Ryan returned to the city with the dog in the back seat. The dog seemed grateful, curling up between them. I guess we'll need to give him a name, Ryan said, looking in the rearview mirror. How about Lucky? Claire suggested. He seems like he's found a second chance today. Ryan smiled. I like it. Welcome, Lucky. The rest of the ride was filled with laughter and light-hearted conversation. When they arrived at Claire's building, Ryan carried the dog to the door. Looks like you've got a new friend, Claire, Ryan said. No, I think we do, she replied with a smile. When Ryan looked at her, Claire felt her heart race again. He seemed like he wanted to say something, but just smiled instead. See you tomorrow, Claire. See you tomorrow, Ryan. As Claire walked into her apartment with Lucky by her side, she felt something different. It wasn't just a connection. It was something more. Something that was beginning to grow. Quietly, but deeply. It was a clear night, with a gentle breeze making the leaves on the trees dance. Claire and Ryan had decided to take Lucky for a walk after dinner, but instead of heading home, they found themselves stopping at a small hill overlooking the city. They sat on the grass side by side with Lucky lying nearby, watching them both. The city looks so small from up here, Claire remarked, gazing at the bright lights in the distance. I think it's because we finally stopped to really look at it, Ryan replied, his voice calm. Sometimes everything feels big and overwhelming, but when you change your perspective, things start to make sense. Claire chuckled softly. You always have some philosophical answer, don't you? Ryan shrugged, smiling. I'm just trying to impress you. Claire turned to him, surprised by his honesty. For a moment, she said nothing, her heart beginning to race. I think it's working, she whispered. Ryan's smile faded, replaced by a serious expression. He leaned in slightly, pausing as if asking for permission. Claire didn't pull back. Instead, she leaned forward until their faces were just inches apart. The kiss was soft, tender, filled with unspoken emotions. Lucky, sensing the moment, stood up and jumped between them, causing them to burst into laughter. I think he doesn't want to share you with me, Ryan said, laughing. Maybe he's just reminding us that we're not alone. Claire smiled, petting Lucky, but her eyes stayed locked on Ryan's. It was a simple moment, but Claire felt something powerful. For the first time, she wasn't afraid to be vulnerable. She realized her feelings for Ryan were genuine, real, and unique. Claire and Ryan's meetings became more frequent after that. He spent many nights at her place, and their connection seemed to grow naturally, as if it had always been there. One evening, as Claire was adjusting a pillow on the couch, Ryan watched her with a gaze that seemed to hold the weight of the world. Claire, he began, his tone soft but steady. She paused what she was doing and looked at him, curious. Ryan took her hands, his eyes fixed on hers. I've never felt this way before. It's like everything in my life has led me to you. I think you're the love of my life. Claire stayed silent for a moment, taking in his words. A gentle smile spread across her face as she replied, I'm in love with you too, Ryan. I never imagined that, in the middle of all the chaos in my life, I would find someone like you. Ryan couldn't resist. He leaned in and kissed her deeply, with tenderness and passion. When their lips parted, he smiled and asked, Claire, Will you be my girlfriend? She widened her eyes in surprise before laughing softly. Ryan, we see each other every day, laugh together, share everything. I thought I already was your girlfriend. He laughed with her but kept his gaze serious. You are, but I want you to know officially that it's only you. Claire laughed again, her heart feeling lighter than it had in a long time. Then yes, I will, she said happily. At that moment, Claire realized how different her new life was from everything she had known before. It was simple, genuine, and most importantly, it made her happy. Truly happy. A few days later, on a morning when Claire woke up alone, she was startled by the insistent ringing of her phone. Lucky barked excitedly as she tried to figure out who was calling so early. Hello? She said groggily. Claire, it's Beatrice, your lawyer. I have news. Laura Mendez has been arrested. Claire sat up in bed, suddenly wide awake. What? How? She tried to enter Switzerland with a fake passport and was detained. During the investigation, authorities uncovered her involvement in the embezzlement at Luminous Beauty. She's being extradited and will be tried for it. Claire put her hand to her forehead, trying to process the information. Does this mean... It means we have a real chance of recovering part of what was taken from you. We're already filing a new claim for restitution. But more importantly, justice will be served. Claire was silent for a moment, feeling a mix of relief and disbelief. Thank you, Beatrice. Truly. When she hung up, Claire looked at Lucky, who was watching her intently. Looks like the tide has turned, buddy. That evening, Claire met Ryan at the cafe. He noticed the different glow in her eyes the moment she walked in. Something good happened, he said, pulling out a chair for her. Claire smiled, feeling lighter than she had in months. Laura was arrested, and now there's a chance I can recover part of what I lost. Ryan looked at her for a moment before smiling. That's amazing, Claire. You deserve this. I don't think I'll get everything back, but I'm happy to know she'll face consequences for what she did. Someday, I hope she understands what it means to live with dignity. Ryan reached across the table and held her hand gently. You've already won, Claire. Even without all that, you rebuilt your life. I'm proud of you. Claire felt her eyes fill with tears, but they were tears of relief and gratitude. In the months that followed, Claire attended Laura's trial. Each hearing was a mix of emotions, relief at seeing justice served and sadness for everything she had lost by blindly trusting the wrong person. However, by the end of the process, Claire managed to recover part of the assets that had been stolen. With the money, she knew she could start over, but in a different way. She didn't want to return to the excessive luxury that had once surrounded her. Now she saw things differently, focusing on what truly mattered. A few days later, Claire visited her cousin Camilla, carrying a basket filled with flowers and chocolates. She rang the doorbell, and Camilla opened the door with a warm smile. Claire, what a nice surprise. Come in, please. Claire handed over the basket and hugged her. I had to come in person. I wanted to thank you for everything. The car you lent me was more than just transportation. It was my chance to start over. Camilla smiled, setting the basket on the table. Oh, Claire, you don't need to thank me for that, but I'm glad it helped. Claire sighed. It was more than that, Camilla. You were the only one who reached out when I was at my lowest. I'll never forget it. The two shared a heartfelt hug, and Claire left feeling reassured that she had people she could count on, even in her darkest moments. On a sunny day, Claire and Ryan sat in the living room, discussing ideas for a new project. Claire had notebooks scattered across the table, and a sparkle in her eyes that Ryan hadn't seen in a long time. I've been thinking about something more meaningful, Claire began, gesturing with enthusiasm. A solidarity-based transportation service, something that connects drivers and passengers on a more human level. Ryan raised an eyebrow, intrigued. What do you mean? Well, rides wouldn't just be about getting someone from point A to point B. They'd be about hearing stories, offering comfort, affordable fares, but with a personal touch. I want the drivers to be trained for that. To create a better experience for everyone. Ryan smiled. That's brilliant, Claire. You've turned what you went through as a driver into something much bigger. She laughed a little shyly. It's my way of giving back. I think driving taught me that everyone has a story, and all of them matter. Ryan took her hand and squeezed it gently. I'm in. I want to be by your side for this. Claire looked at him, surprised but deeply moved. Really? Of course. This is what I've always wanted. To work on something meaningful, with someone who truly matters to me. Lucky, who had been napping in the corner, let out a soft bark, as if giving his approval to the plan. Claire's life was no longer simple in material terms. She had a beautiful apartment, a new car, functional and comfortable but without the extravagance of her past. And she had resumed going to the salon, something she genuinely missed. But more importantly, she now had something she had never experienced before. A light heart, full of humility and gratitude. As she and Ryan worked together on their new project, Claire felt her life taking on a greater purpose. It wasn't just about business anymore. It was about people, about stories, about giving back. Henry, Claire's father, sought her out after the trial. He arrived at her new apartment as elegant as ever, but with a more subdued expression than usual. Claire welcomed him into the living room, where Lucky played distractedly in the corner. For a moment, silence filled the room until Henry broke the tension. Claire, I'm here because I need to say something. He paused, glancing around before meeting her eyes. You're stronger than I ever imagined. I'm proud of who you've become. Claire raised her eyebrows slightly, surprised by his words. Throughout her life, Henry had rarely shown any affection or recognition. Thank you, Dad, she responded, her voice measured but devoid of emotion. Henry seemed uneasy, as though carefully choosing his words. I want you to come back to Luminous Beauty. You'll be our new CEO. I think it's the right time. Claire let out a small laugh, almost as a reflex. It wasn't mocking, but the reaction of someone who had moved past the pain and now saw the situation with clarity. Dad, I appreciate the offer and your words, but no. Her answer was firm, but not hostile. Henry frowned. No? You've always dreamed of this. Why not now, when everything is falling back into place? Claire took a deep breath before replying, her voice calm but full of conviction. I've always dreamed of being valued, Dad, of doing something meaningful. But when everything fell apart, you weren't supportive. You blamed me and cast me out. She paused, meeting his gaze directly. In that moment, I realized that the support I had always hoped for from you would never come. Henry opened his mouth to respond, but Claire continued, resolute. Today I see that I don't need the company's validation or your approval to be who I am. I've built a life I'm proud of, surrounded by people who truly care about me. And honestly, I'm okay with that. Henry looked unsettled, but Claire remained steady. There was a lightness in her words that showed she bore no resentment, only certainty that it was time to move forward. I hope Luminous Beauty thrives, Dad, and I wish the same for you. But I won't return. I want to build something of my own, something that reflects my purpose. Henry didn't push further. He stood, adjusting his suit, and before leaving, he said, You've changed a lot, Claire, more than I thought possible, and for that, I respect you. Claire smiled faintly, but this time without bitterness. Thank you. I hope you find what you're looking for someday, too. After Henry left, Claire felt something surprising. Relief. She had finally closed a chapter in her life. Though she still felt a slight sting from all he had done, his refusal to take responsibility, and the way he had abandoned her when she needed him most, Claire knew that holding on to resentment wasn't the answer. Her father was part of her past, and now her focus was on the present. Claire looked at Lucky, who came up to her, wagging his tail as if to say everything was all right. That's it, buddy. We move forward, no looking back, she said, stroking his head. The Claire who once sought approval and recognition now understood that true value lay in living by her principles, humility, gratitude, and love for what truly mattered. Her life felt lighter, more authentic. She had purpose with her new project, loyal friends, a sincere love in Ryan, and Lucky, who always seemed to know exactly when she needed comfort. Claire no longer desired the illusion of perfection she once had. She wanted the simplicity of truth, and she felt that she had finally found it. After her father left, leaving behind the echo of overdue words, Claire's phone vibrated on the table. It was the 5th time that day. On the screen, a familiar name appeared, one of her old friends, the kind who had vanished when she lost everything. Since the trial ended and news spread that Claire had regained part of her fortune, the calls and messages had come flooding back. Invitations to dinners, questions about trips, false compliments laced with hidden intentions. Claire knew exactly what it meant. They weren't interested in the Claire she was now, the one learning to value the simple and the authentic. No, they wanted the heiress she used to be. They wanted the parties, the exclusive trips, and the sparkle she could provide. Claire picked up the phone and stared at the screen for a moment before sighing deeply. She no longer felt anger, just a calm exhaustion that came from someone who finally understood what truly mattered. Without replying, she pressed the button to silence the device. Lucky appeared at her side, wagging his tail and holding his favorite toy in his mouth. Claire smiled, picking up the ball to play with him. "You know, Lucky, I think I've had enough friends for a lifetime. Now I just want the ones who really matter." On a peaceful afternoon, Claire, Ryan, and Lucky strolled through the park. The dog ran joyfully after a ball, while Claire and Ryan walked hand in hand. "I think I finally understand what less is more really means," Claire said, watching Lucky play. Ryan looked at her with a smile. "And now you have everything that matters." Claire nodded, her eyes shining. "Yes, I have you, Lucky, and a purpose. What more could I want?" Ryan stopped, gently holding her face in his hands. "I just hope to be part of this new life forever." Claire smiled and replied, "You already are." As the sun set, painting the sky in golden hues, Claire felt a profound sense of peace. She was no longer the lost heiress. She was Claire, strong, resilient, and ready to embrace the future alongside those who truly mattered. I hope you were moved by this story filled with love, challenges, and transformations. If you enjoyed it and want to keep following inspiring narratives like this one, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the Stories for You channel. Here, every story is a new journey, designed to touch your heart and spark meaningful reflections. Leave a comment sharing your thoughts and ideas for future stories. Your opinion is very important to us. The millionaire pretended to marry the waitress, but what he didn't know was that she was... Get ready, this story will touch your heart. Leave a like on this video and comment where you're watching from. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more new videos. Tyler Johnson had always known that the world belonged to the strongest. From an early age, he learned that emotions were mere distractions, and that success came to those who knew how to play the game. At 34, he wasn't just a successful millionaire businessman. He was a walking empire. As the founder and CEO of Johnson Developers, he had transformed his family's company into a giant in the real estate market. Skyscrapers built under his supervision dominated the most valuable urban centers in the United States. His name was synonymous with ambition and strategy, and his competitors feared him. Money was never an issue. It never had been. Tyler possessed a fortune that would guarantee luxury and comfort for generations. His triplex penthouse in New York offered a panoramic view of the city. His travels were done in private jets, and any car in his collection cost more than most people would earn in a lifetime. But that wasn't what drove him. What truly mattered to him was the game, the competition, the thrill of being on top, crushing the competition, overcoming challenges, proving, again and again, that no one could defeat him. Money was merely the consequence of his intelligence and capability, but what kept him awake at night wasn't a swollen bank account. It was the next big project, the next move that would cement his dominance in the market. At the top of a towering skyscraper, he observed New York through the massive glass windows of his office. The building, with its modern architecture and sleek lines, bore his last name in golden letters at the entrance. From up there, he watched the city pulse below him, millions of lives moving forward, but none of them mattered. For Tyler, only one thing was essential: winning. That was when the door opened. His grandfather, Anthony Johnson, entered with firm steps, not bothering to ask for permission. The family patriarch was a man of strong presence, his neatly combed gray hair complementing his expression filled with experience and authority. Contrary to what many believed, Anthony was not a sentimental old man. He was a strategist as cold as his grandson. But unlike Tyler, he believed that power required stability. He walked over to the leather chair in front of his grandson's desk and sat down slowly, without saying a word. Tyler turned away from the window and faced him. The silence stretched for a few uncomfortable seconds before the old man decided to break it. "You have enough money to live the rest of your life without lifting a single finger," Anthony said, his voice firm and to the point. "If I remove you from the presidency today, you won't lack a thing." Tyler didn't respond immediately. His gaze remained fixed on his grandfather, analyzing every word. "So that's the plan? Make me a spectator in my own company?" His voice was controlled but carried an underlying tension. Anthony leaned forward, resting his hands on the intricately carved wooden cane he always carried. "This has always been the deal, Tyler. Johnson Developers is not just a money-making machine. It's a legacy, and legacies are not built alone." Tyler let out a low, humorless laugh. "You really think a marriage will change anything?" "I think a man who doesn't build roots doesn't understand the true meaning of leadership," Anthony countered. His cold, calculating eyes did not waver. "And to be honest, I wouldn't hesitate to replace you." Tyler felt his jaw tighten. "You're telling me you'd put Mauro in charge without a second thought?" His grandfather leaned back in the chair, crossing his hands over his cane. "If he proves he has more vision than you, yes." Rage burned in Tyler's chest. Mauro was a parasite, an opportunistic heir who had never built anything on his own. The mere idea of seeing him take his place was unacceptable. "This ultimatum is ridiculous," Tyler muttered, his voice dripping with disdain. "You may think so," Anthony replied with a shrug. "But either you get married by next year, or you're out." Tyler ran his tongue over his teeth, thinking fast. He could lose everything. He could watch Mauro destroy the empire he had built, or he could find a solution. And if he needed a wife, then he would do it his way. No love, no weaknesses, just another contract. 2 days later, Tyler was on his way to an important meeting across the city. As always, his driver navigated one of his luxury cars through New York's busy streets. The watch on his wrist showed that he still had plenty of time before the appointment. Bothered by the thought of arriving early and wasting precious minutes waiting, he decided to stop for coffee. But instead of choosing one of the sophisticated establishments he usually frequented, he asked his driver to park in a more modest neighborhood. Not out of nostalgia or curiosity, but because it was the only place nearby that seemed remotely acceptable. When he stepped out of the car, adjusting the cuffs of his tailored suit, he frowned as he observed his surroundings. Simpler streets, storefronts worn by time, and a modest local commerce. Definitely not part of his routine. He entered the diner without paying much attention to the details, solely focused on getting a quick coffee before heading to his appointment. The aroma of fresh bread and strong coffee filled the air, creating a contrast with his impeccable, out-of-place presence. He took out his phone and sat at a table in the corner, scrolling through emails while speaking to one of his directors over the phone. "I want the contract draft on my desk by the end of the day. No mistakes." As he spoke, the employees carried on with their work. Customers came and went. The diner continued its quiet routine, unaware of the presence of a man who, to many, was one of the most powerful businessmen in the country. Then, firm footsteps echoed against the floor. "I never thought I'd see Tyler Johnson having coffee in a place like this." The female voice, laced with irony, cut through the air. Tyler looked up, ready to ignore whatever interruption was coming his way. But the moment his eyes met hers, the world around him seemed to slow down. Elena Miller. For a fraction of a second, he froze. The past came rushing back like a storm. Her eyes were still the same, defiant, intense, fearless. But now, there was something different. A shadow of exhaustion. The waitress uniform, the tray in her hands. He blinked, taking in the scene before him. Elena crossed her arms, staring at him as if daring him to say something. And I never thought the woman who once called me an unbearable, arrogant jerk would be serving me coffee. Tyler shot back, a slow smile forming on his lips. She narrowed her eyes. If you want coffee, you're going to have to pay like any other customer. That attitude, exactly how he remembered her. And suddenly, Tyler found himself intrigued. Elena turned to leave, but he stopped her before she could take a single step. What happened to you? His voice came out more curious than he had intended. Elena let out a short, humorless laugh. Life happened. Now do you want the coffee or not? Tyler didn't answer right away. His eyes stayed locked on her, analyzing her more closely. He wasn't the kind of man who was easily surprised, but seeing Elena Miller, the woman he once considered one of the most promising employees at the company, serving coffee in some small diner was something he couldn't ignore. In the few months Elena had interned at Johnson Developers, she had stood out in an exceptional way. While most interns trembled in front of him, trying to guess what he wanted to hear, Elena never hesitated to challenge him. She was sharp, bold, intelligent, and fearless. He remembered one particular meeting years ago when a group of executives was discussing a project, and Elena, without hesitation, pointed out flaws no one else dared to mention. She didn't just see the details others overlooked, she talked about them, without fear. Back then, Tyler was convinced she was destined to be a great executive, maybe even a successful CEO. He never doubted that one day, Elena Miller's name would be mentioned alongside the best in the industry. And now, there she was, wearing a simple uniform, holding a tray, working a long, exhausting shift in some random diner. What happened? The question echoed in his mind, but he didn't ask again. Elena wasn't the type of woman who explained herself to others. He had realized that the first time he met her, years ago. But if there was one thing he knew, it was that no one went from a promising career to a diner counter without a reason. And that was exactly what bothered him. Tyler ran his tongue over his teeth, deep in thought. Because in that moment an idea started to take shape in his mind. He needed a wife. And Elena Miller, the only woman who had never bowed to him, had just become his best option. 2 days had passed since the unexpected reunion, but the image of Elena serving coffee in that cheap diner still lingered in Tyler's mind. Something inside him refused to accept it. It didn't make sense. Elena Miller wasn't a waitress. She was meant for corporate offices, for strategic meetings, for leading teams with that sharp gaze and sharper tongue. And more than that, she was the piece he needed now. Tyler never wasted time when he wanted something. So that night, sitting inside his armored car, he watched the small diner where Elena worked. He waited for her shift to end. Patience wasn't one of his virtues, but he knew that some things needed to be done the right way. Minutes later, Elena stepped out through the back door, pulling her bag over her shoulder. Her face showed exhaustion, but her eyes still carried the same determination as always. She walked through the side alley, probably heading toward the bus stop. Tyler stepped out of the car and approached her. You always had potential for great things, Elena, but I never imagined your destiny would be serving coffee and wiping tables. She stopped immediately. Her entire body tensed at the sound of that voice. She closed her eyes for a second before turning around, already expecting Tyler Johnson's arrogance. What the hell are you doing here? She snapped, crossing her arms. He took a step forward, the yellowish streetlight reflecting off his perfectly sculpted features. There was no provocation in his gaze, just an unshakable certainty. I came to make you an offer, he replied calmly. Elena let out a short, humorless laugh. Sorry, but I believe I already declined your job offer years ago. I don't see why I'd change my mind now. Tyler tilted his head slightly, analyzing her with that meticulous stare she had always hated. This has nothing to do with a job, he said. I want you to marry me. The silence that followed was so deep that Elena was sure she had misheard. She blinked, trying to process his words, but then burst into genuine laughter, unable to hold it back. The exhaustion, the surprise, the sheer absurdity of the situation. It all mixed together in the most ridiculous way. Oh, sure. And I suppose after that I'll live in a castle and raise unicorns in the backyard. Have you lost your mind? But Tyler didn't smile. He wasn't joking. It's a marriage of convenience, Elena. No feelings, no attachment. Just a contract. You marry me for a year, and in return, I solve all your financial problems. The amusement in her eyes disappeared. Now, something deeper, something dangerous, took its place. You really think you can buy anything, don't you? She said, her voice lower but razor-sharp. Tyler didn't look away. I know I can offer you something you need. Money, stability, security. I know you're killing yourself working for a miserable paycheck. I can change all of that. All you have to do is say yes. Elena felt anger rising in her chest. You don't know anything about me, Tyler. I know enough to understand that you can't afford to refuse this proposal, he countered, his voice firm. This isn't charity, Elena. It's a deal. You get something. I get something. Simple as that. She shook her head in disbelief. You want a wife under contract? For what? To keep your image intact in front of the shareholders? To pretend you have a heart? What exactly do you want from me, Tyler? He took another step forward, close enough that she could feel his presence like a dense, imposing shadow. My grandfather wants me to get married. If I don't, I lose the presidency of the company. I'm not willing to let that happen. And you're the perfect choice. Smart, independent, and most importantly, you won't fall in love with me. That makes things easier. Elena bit her lip. The proposal was insane. But the worst part was that he was right about one thing. She needed the money, and that realization destroyed her inside. Tyler watched her every reaction. He knew he had planted the seed of doubt. He knew he had presented her with an offer she couldn't easily ignore. I'm not something you can buy, she murmured, her voice weaker than she would have liked. But you can be a partner in a mutually beneficial arrangement, he countered. She narrowed her eyes, trying to contain the storm of thoughts rushing through her mind. Tyler took a step back, giving her one last firm look. Think about it, but don't take too long. My patience has limits. With that, he walked away, leaving her standing in the middle of the street with the most absurd and tempting proposal of her life. Elena stood frozen for a few seconds, the cold night wind brushing against her skin. Every fiber of her being wanted to reject the idea without a second thought. But deep down, an unsettling truth began to settle in her mind. She had no choice. The night dragged on slowly, and Elena couldn't sleep. Lying in her modest bed, she stared at the ceiling, her thoughts spinning in a whirlwind she couldn't control. Tyler's words echoed in her mind, repeating like a haunting mantra. You get something, I get something, simple as that. But nothing about it was simple. She turned to her side, squeezing her eyes shut. She had always been proud, always believed she could manage her own life without anyone's help. But now, she felt cornered. It wasn't just about her life, her principles. There were responsibilities weighing on her shoulders, bills that never stopped coming, and a future that seemed more uncertain every day. Elena closed her eyes, and as always happened in the silent hours of the night, the memories came rushing back. The accident. She could still remember the smell of burning, the sound of twisted metal, the screams of pain and despair. A single moment of carelessness, and everything she knew fell apart. Her mother and brother died on that road in a brutal impact. Her father survived only to be accused of causing the accident. Another car had hit them, but the other grieving family needed someone to blame, and the system was cruel to him. Since then, Elena had carried a burden few could bear. She worked tirelessly, not just to cover her own expenses, but to pay the lawyer fighting to prove her father's innocence. Every cent was counted. Every day was a battle against time. The fear of seeing him wrongly convicted haunted her. He was behind bars, waiting for the truth to be heard, while she did the impossible to make sure that happened. She picked up her phone and opened job search sites. She spent minutes scrolling, but every listing paid less than she already made. She tried to think of old contacts, potential opportunities. Nothing. No doors opened. Her breathing grew heavy. A dull ache spread in her chest. She was running out of options. She curled up in bed, hugging her knees. She was angry at Tyler for putting that proposal on the table. But more than anything, she was angry at herself for even considering accepting it. But maybe this was the only way out. Maybe pride had to be swallowed for her father to get justice. The clock read 4 in the morning when she finally let out a long sigh. Her eyes burned with exhaustion, but her mind remained alert. Deep down, she knew the answer. She always had. The next day, Elena would meet with Tyler, and she would give him her answer. The cafe where they arranged to meet was discreet, far from the spotlight of high society and the constant speculation about Tyler Johnson's life. He was already there when Elena arrived, sitting at the most secluded table, his fingers idly spinning the coffee cup before him. His impeccable suit contrasted sharply with the simple setting, as if he were a king lost in common lands. Elena entered and walked toward him with firm steps without hesitation. Her face was expressionless, a meticulously crafted shield for the occasion. If she was going to sell her freedom for a year, she would at least keep her dignity intact. "Well?" Tyler lifted his eyes to her as soon as she sat down. "Have you considered my proposal?" Elena placed her bag beside her and crossed her arms over the table, keeping her posture straight. She looked directly at him, her eyes cold as ice. "Yes, I accept, but I need to make a few things clear." Her voice did not waver, nor did it carry emotion. It was a practical tone, as if discussing the terms of any other contract. Tyler raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "I'm listening." "This is a business deal, nothing more. I expect nothing from you beyond what was agreed upon, and I expect the same in return," she began, each word measured. "I want everything documented, with well-defined terms. And when this year is over, I walk away without looking back." Tyler observed her for a few moments, silent. Her firmness didn't surprise him, but there was something different. She wasn't playing hard to get or trying to negotiate. This was pure pragmatism, and he liked that. Deep down, it was exactly what he expected from her. This would make things easier. "No attachments, no surprises," he repeated, nodding slightly. "I think I can handle that." Elena took a deep breath, preparing herself for what would come next. Tyler leaned back in his chair, intertwining his fingers over the table, and began speaking with the same relentless calm as always. "There are a few conditions that will need to be followed within this agreement," he started, watching her closely. "You'll have to attend company events with me, dinners with shareholders, strategic meetings, business trips when necessary. Our relationship needs to look convincing to everyone." Elena remained impassive, merely nodding slightly. "In addition, there will be public appearances," he continued. "My family cannot suspect that this is a contract. You will need to be present at family gatherings, weekend meetings, and occasional dinners my grandfather organizes." She kept her expression neutral, but the weight of that reality was settling onto her shoulders. "You will have access to my social circle, but will need to follow certain rules," he concluded. "Discretion above all. No questions about my personal life and no involvement beyond what is necessary. I will cover all your expenses, clothes for events, travel with me. You won't have to worry about any of that. I'll give you a credit card, and also a salary 6 times what you earn as a waitress. You can save that amount since all your expenses will be covered by me. Additionally, at the end of the year, I will give you $1 million as a token of appreciation." The amount was more than Elena had expected. Much more. With that, she could finally pay off all her debts, cover her father's legal fees, and maybe, just maybe, start over. For years, she had carried the burden of mounting bills, sleepless nights calculating figures that never balanced. She had sold her parents' house to keep the legal case going, living in a cramped, suffocating apartment. Now, for the first time in a long time, she saw a way out. Maybe she could even buy a new home, a place where she could truly begin again. Elena exhaled slowly before responding. "As long as all of this is in the contract, I have no problem with it." As if sealing her fate for good. Then she extended her hand to him. "Great. Then we have a deal. Tyler smirked slightly, almost amused by her coldness. He took her outstretched hand and shook it, sealing a pact that would change everything, even if neither of them knew it yet. We have a deal. Welcome to my world, Elena. Tyler had always known that there was only one person in the world he could truly trust, his sister, Addison Johnson. Unlike him, Addison was warm, sincere, and saw people for more than what they could offer. She was a practical woman but had a genuine heart. Maybe that was why, when he told her his plan, she didn't hide her initial disgust. "You've got to be kidding me, Tyler," Addison said, crossing her arms as she watched him in his luxurious office. "You're literally paying a woman to pretend she loves you? There are so many things wrong with this that I don't even know where to start." Tyler sighed, leaning back in his chair. "I don't have time for a real relationship, Addison. This solves a practical problem and avoids complications. Elena knows what she's getting into." Addison raised an eyebrow. "Does she really? You may think this is just a contract, but emotions are complicated. And honestly, I don't think this is a good idea." He looked at her firmly. "I just need you to help her get ready. Take her shopping, pick out appropriate outfits for the events, and then take her to the salon. I need her to look suitable for the position." Addison stared at him for a few seconds before sighing. "You're impossible. But you know what? Maybe spending time with someone outside of your world will be good for you. Who knows? You might actually learn something." Tyler didn't respond, just smirked. Addison didn't know it yet, but that possibility already unsettled him. The day started early for Elena. As soon as Addison picked her up, it was clear it was going to be a long day. They started in the most luxurious neighborhood in the city, filled with designer boutiques and dazzling storefronts. "All right, Elena, time to make you worthy of the Johnson name," Addison said with a mischievous grin, pulling her into the first store. Elena rolled her eyes, still skeptical. She wasn't the type to be impressed by dresses worth thousands of dollars, but Addison seemed determined. And to her surprise, she wasn't as insufferable as she had expected. Inside the store, stylists rushed to assist them. Elena tried on sophisticated dresses, towering heels, and accessories that sparkled under the bright lights. With each new outfit, Addison observed closely, as if studying every detail of her future sister-in-law. "You have an elegant presence," Addison remarked as Elena examined herself in the mirror. "And confidence. If I didn't know the whole story, I'd say you were born for this world." Elena let out a short laugh. "I was born to survive, Addison, and right now this is just a costume for Tyler's show." Addison smirked. Elena was different, direct, no pretense, no games. And there was something about her that felt more real than anyone in Tyler's circle. After hours of shopping, they headed to one of the city's most exclusive beauty salons. As hairstylists and makeup artists worked, Addison leaned back in her chair, watching Elena. "You don't trust people much, do you?" Addison asked, her tone softer. Elena sighed, closing her eyes as a makeup artist applied primer to her skin. "Number life taught me to be this way." Addison nodded, understanding more than Elena realized. Maybe deep down, they weren't so different. When the transformation was complete, Elena stood up and looked at herself in the mirror. Her reflection surprised her. She looked like a woman from another world, a refined and sophisticated version of herself. Addison smiled, satisfied. "There, now you're ready to impress even our grandfather." Elena, however, knew that appearances were the easy part. The real challenge would begin that night at dinner. Before heading to dinner at his grandfather's house, Tyler and Elena were in the car, and he decided to reinforce the role she needed to play. "Listen carefully, Elena. My grandfather isn't a fool. He'll try to find any flaw in our story. So you need to look completely smitten with me," he said, staring at her seriously. Elena scoffed, crossing her arms. "Oh, sure, because it's so easy to pretend I'm madly in love with a cold and insufferable man like you." Tyler smirked, amused. "Shall we start rehearsing?" He took her hand and intertwined their fingers. "Look into my eyes and say something affectionate." Elena rolled her eyes but took a deep breath and forced a sweet smile. My love, you are the light of my life. With each passing day, I fall more in love with your incredible talent for being bossy and irritating. Tyler let out a low chuckle. Perfect. I almost believed you. She narrowed her eyes at him. Now it's your turn, sweetheart, she teased. Tyler held her gaze steadily, and without breaking composure, he slid his fingers along her face, speaking in an absurdly convincing tone. My love, from the moment I saw you, I knew you were the woman of my life. I can't wait to spend every morning by your side, admiring you as you sleep. Elena jerked her hand away before he could continue, shuddering. Enough! That was too convincing. It even gave me chills. Tyler chuckled lowly and adjusted his suit. Good. Save that reaction for when we're in front of my grandfather. They stared at each other for a moment, and for the first time, Elena realized that this little charade might be harder than she had imagined. The Johnson estate exuded grandeur, every detail meticulously designed to reflect the family's power. The dinner introducing Elena as Tyler's fiancée would be her first trial by fire. Tyler's grandfather, Anthony Johnson, was a man of imposing presence, sharp eyes, and an expression always laced with judgment. As soon as Elena and Tyler entered the dining hall, he scrutinized them from head to toe, his eyes narrowing slightly upon recognizing the young woman beside his grandson. Elena Miller, Anthony murmured, leaning slightly forward. If my memory serves me correctly, you used to work at our company, didn't you? Elena maintained her composure, offering a polite smile. Yes, Mr. Johnson. That was a few years ago. Anthony didn't avert his gaze, clearly trying to decipher the situation. Interesting. And now you're here, as my grandson's fiancée. The world does take unexpected turns. Without hesitation, Tyler placed his hand over Elena's and squeezed lightly, a silent signal for her to stick to their narrative. Actually, Grandpa, I've always been in love with Elena, Tyler interjected confidently. We reconnected a few months ago, and I realized I should never have let her go. It was inevitable. Anthony continued watching them, skepticism evident. Elena, however, remained flawless. Her tone was smooth, articulate, and calculated. It was an unexpected reunion, but a very special one. Tyler won me over, and now we're taking this step together. The elder Johnson remained silent for a moment before allowing a brief smile, though his eyes still held doubts. Elena, you've always been a smart woman. I'm sure you'll have a bright future at my grandson's side, Anthony said, raising his wine glass. As dinner progressed, Elena held her ground. She displayed intelligence in every conversation, answering the grandfather's incisive questions with the same elegance and wit she had always possessed. Anthony took note of this and felt a growing respect for the young woman. But one thought kept nagging at him. His grandson, so pragmatic and rational, did he truly deserve a woman like Elena? Something told him that in the end, Tyler would end up hurting her. The wedding took place discreetly, away from society columns and the curious eyes of high society. For Tyler, it was merely a contract sealed with minimal formalities. For Elena, it was a definitive entry into a game she wasn't sure she could win. The ceremony was held in a luxurious courthouse reserved for special occasions. Addison and Anthony were the only witnesses present. Elena wore an elegant white ensemble, modest but sophisticated. Tyler, as always, was impeccable in a dark suit. The officiant read the terms of the civil marriage with the same bureaucratic formality that Elena felt throughout the process. When invited to say, "I do," she took a deep breath before responding. Yes, Tyler answered without hesitation. Then, the papers were signed, and the marriage was official. Addison, despite still having reservations about her brother's plan, approached Elena and held her hands with a sincere smile. "Welcome to the family," she said, as if she genuinely wished it were real. Anthony, on the other hand, merely observed. His sharp gaze scanned Elena as if trying to decipher a puzzle. He found it odd that Tyler hadn't thrown an extravagant wedding, inviting the entire family, including his parents who lived abroad. He knew his grandson too well to believe in selfless gestures. Yet something about Elena intrigued him. She didn't seem like an opportunist, nor did she fit the profile of someone seeking status or wealth. Perhaps Tyler, so pragmatic and calculated, had genuinely fallen for her. Or maybe he was simply rushing things to secure his position in the company. For now, Anthony chose to believe his grandson's version. But he would remain watchful, very watchful. As they exited the courthouse, hired photographers captured strategic images of the couple, ensuring the marriage was presented appropriately to shareholders and investors. Elena and Tyler shared a brief, rehearsed kiss, just enough to maintain appearances. "There," he murmured against her lips. "You are now officially Mrs. Johnson." Elena met his gaze, her expression unreadable. "And now?" she asked, crossing her arms. Tyler adjusted his suit and opened the car door for her. "Now we go to our new home. Our life together begins today." The Johnson estate was a direct reflection of Tyler's personality, grand, meticulously organized, and cold. As soon as they arrived, staff opened the imposing doors, already prepared to attend to any needs of the newlywed couple. Elena stepped inside and took in her surroundings: polished marble, expensive furniture, and an absolute silence that made everything feel even more oppressive. "The master suite is yours," Tyler said, pointing toward the hallway. "My room is at the other end of the house. We'll keep up appearances only when necessary." Elena let out a short, incredulous laugh. What a considerate husband. He didn't respond, merely shrugged off his jacket and tossed it onto the sofa. "We have an event to attend tomorrow. I'll send you the details later." He observed her for a moment before adding, "Do whatever you want today. Just be ready to play your role when needed." Elena nodded, emotionless. "Good night, dear husband." Tyler raised an eyebrow but said nothing. He simply walked to his own room, leaving Elena alone in the vastness of the house. The Johnson estate was a labyrinth of marble, glass, and silence. In the first few days, Elena felt out of place. Despite the luxury, the atmosphere was cold, impersonal, lifeless. The staff treated her with respect, but with a rehearsed formality. It was as if everyone there was accustomed to following strict rules, and she, more than ever, felt like an outsider in this game. Tyler, on the other hand, remained unchanged. He left early, returned late, and in the few moments they were together, he spoke only when necessary. There were no arguments, but there was also no real conversation. They moved like two strangers sharing the same space, forced to play a role. One afternoon, after wandering through the mansion's endless corridors, Elena found a slightly open door at the end of a long hallway. Curiosity got the best of her, and she gently pushed the door open. It was a spacious room dominated by a black grand piano. The space felt different from the rest of the house. It wasn't cold, nor was it impeccably arranged like the rest of the estate. Sheet music was scattered across the instrument, and a nearby armchair had an open book resting on it, as if someone had been there recently. Before she could take a closer look, a voice echoed behind her. "What are you doing here?" Elena turned quickly to find Tyler standing at the doorway. His expression was impassive, but something in his posture was different, less controlled, more tense. "I was just exploring," she said, raising her hand slightly. "I didn't know you played." Tyler shut the door behind him and crossed his arms. "I don't play." She arched an eyebrow, glancing at the piano. "Looks like someone does." He averted his gaze for a moment before shrugging. "I haven't played in years. It's irrelevant." Elena picked up on the finality in his tone. Something about that piano unsettled him. In that moment, she saw a different Tyler. Not the cold and calculating businessman, but a man with a past he clearly avoided. "All right, but if you ever decide to play again, I'd like to hear it," she said, stepping back as if respecting the invisible boundary he had drawn. Tyler didn't respond. He simply observed her for a few seconds before turning and leaving Elena alone in the room with more questions than answers. The night was just beginning when Elena entered the luxurious ballroom alongside Tyler. The event was a gala dinner hosted by Johnson Developers, gathering shareholders, investors, and members of the corporate elite. Camera flashes fired as the couple made their entrance. This was Elena's first major test. She was flawless. She wore a long black gown, elegant and sophisticated, with a discreet cut that highlighted her commanding presence. Her hair fell in perfectly styled waves, and her subtle makeup only enhanced her natural beauty. Tyler cast a discreet glance at her. If he didn't know it was all an act, he might have believed they were truly a couple. "Remember what we talked about," he murmured as they approached the main table. "Smile, make conversation, but don't reveal too much, just enough to seem natural." Elena gave a small smile. "Relax, darling. Pretending to like you is easier than I thought." He shot her a warning look, but they quickly recomposed themselves as the event's host approached. Throughout dinner, Elena surprised Tyler. She conversed effortlessly, displayed intelligence, and had an impressive ability to connect with people. When asked about her past, she elegantly redirected the conversation to safe topics, never overcommitting. Tyler, used to controlling every situation, realized that tonight, he didn't need to intervene. Elena handled everything as if she had been born for this, but not everything would be so easy. That was when an unwelcome presence approached. Audrey Smith, Tyler's ex-girlfriend, appeared with a smug smile and a glass of champagne in hand. "Tyler Johnson," she said with a sharp look, "and this must be your new wife. What an interesting twist." Elena kept her composure and extended her hand. "Elena Johnson, a pleasure to meet you." Audrey shook her hand, but the smile never reached her eyes. "I must admit I'm surprised. I always thought Tyler wasn't the type to settle down, but you manage something no other woman has. What's your secret?" The insinuating tone made Elena realize this was a test, and she wouldn't give Audrey the satisfaction of winning. She held Tyler's arm and smiled sweetly. "Oh, Audrey, some men just need the right woman to realize they've been waiting for something real. Isn't that right, my love?" she said, looking at Tyler with playful amusement in her eyes. Without missing a beat, Tyler slid his hand around her waist and leaned in slightly. "Exactly," he responded before pulling her in for an unexpected kiss. It was quick but effective, just enough for the photographers to capture it, and for Audrey to lose the color in her face. Elena barely had time to react before Tyler pulled away with a look of pure satisfaction. "Now, if you'll excuse us, my wife and I have other guests to greet," he said, leading Elena away. As they walked through the ballroom, she muttered through gritted teeth, "If you do that again without warning, I'll kill you." Tyler smirked. "Just fulfilling our roles, dear. And honestly, you're doing better than I expected." They continued mingling, greeting investors, exchanging polite smiles. Elena noticed that despite Tyler's confident posture, he kept a watchful eye on everything around him. In a more private moment, she couldn't resist her curiosity. "Why did you break up with Audrey?" she asked, keeping her tone casual. "She still seems obsessed with you." Tyler exhaled and tightened his grip slightly on the whiskey glass he held. "Because she was superficial," he finally answered. "Even though she was a successful executive, our goals were completely different. She always tried to manipulate me, and even went as far as faking a pregnancy to trap me into marriage." Elena's eyes widened in surprise. "You're kidding." "I wish I were," he said with a cynical smile. "But even then, I refused to marry her. Sometime later, I found out it was all a lie, and I walked away without looking back." Elena studied his face. For the first time, she saw something beyond arrogance and control. There was exhaustion, a trace of disappointment he tried to hide. For a brief moment, she realized that Tyler Johnson, the always impeccable and calculated man, had his own wounds. She looked away, processing this new information. Maybe he wasn't as unshakable as he pretended to be. Elena took a deep breath. This game was just beginning, but now she saw the pieces in a different light. The ride back to the estate was silent. In the passenger seat, Elena watched the city lights through the window, still processing the intense night. The event had been a success. She had done well, impressed the investors, and handled Audrey without losing her composure. But what truly unsettled her was the conversation she had with Tyler. The story about Audrey affected her in an unexpected way. She had seen a different side of Tyler, a man who carried disappointments and scars. He wasn't just the cold, calculating businessman she had imagined. There was something more beneath the layers of control and power. When they arrived at the estate, Tyler exited the car first, handing the keys to the driver without a word. Elena walked to the entrance, and when she noticed he wasn't following, she looked back. He veered off from the main hallway and headed toward the west wing of the house. Curious, she hesitated for a moment before deciding to follow him. The door to the office was slightly ajar. Elena approached quietly and peeked inside. The scene she found was unexpected. Tyler was seated in a leather armchair, a glass of whiskey between his fingers. His usually impeccable posture was slightly more relaxed, and his gaze, lost in the amber liquid, suggested his mind was elsewhere. "Drinking alone? That doesn't quite fit your controlled persona," Elena said, leaning against the doorframe. Tyler didn't seem surprised. He merely swirled the glass in his hand, not lifting his eyes. "Too much control can be exhausting sometimes," he replied, his voice lower than usual. Elena stepped into the office and looked around. The space felt more personal than the rest of the house. Books were stacked on the desk, a few scribbled notes scattered on loose sheets. Nothing about this room felt as meticulously curated as the rest of the estate. She approached and stopped in front of him. "May I?" she asked, gesturing to the bottle beside him. Tyler raised an eyebrow but slid the extra glass in her direction. Elena poured herself a drink and took a sip, feeling the warmth of the liquor burn down her throat. "Impressive," she said. "You really have a talent for pushing people away." He let out a low chuckle, devoid of humor. "It's a natural gift." Elena twirled the glass between her fingers, studying him. "What else do you hide behind that flawless facade, Tyler?" He lifted his gaze to her. For a moment he seemed to consider answering, but instead he took a long sip of his drink and looked away. "Nothing worth sharing." Elena held his gaze for a moment before reclining into the chair beside him. "You can keep pretending nothing affects you, but I saw it today. I saw it in your eyes when you talked about Audrey. You once trusted someone, and that person let you down." Tyler didn't respond immediately. The silence between them was heavy with unspoken meanings. Then he let out a long breath and leaned back in his chair, staring at the ceiling. "And what about you, Elena? Who has let you down?" She pressed her lips together, unwilling to reveal more than she should. "No one important." They locked eyes for a moment, as if daring each other to break their own barriers. But instead of continuing the game, Elena finished her whiskey and placed the glass on the table. "Good night, Tyler." She stood and left the office without waiting for a response. Just as she reached the door, she heard his low voice behind her. "Good night, Elena." As she walked through the dimly lit corridor of the estate, Elena saw Tyler in a different light. He wasn't just the cold, controlling businessman she thought she knew. There were layers there, old wounds, and a loneliness he masked with authority. But that didn't change the fact that they were bound by an agreement. The following days were a silent dance between Tyler and Elena. He spent most of his time away, immersed in work, while she tried to adjust to her new life. But no matter the luxury of the estate or the comfort of expensive clothes, Elena felt increasingly suffocated. It was on an ordinary morning during breakfast that the tension finally erupted. "This is starting to feel like a prison," Elena snapped, setting her cup down on the table with more force than intended. Tyler lifted his eyes from the newspaper, clearly lacking the patience for morning arguments. "If there's something you're unhappy with, let me know. As far as I'm aware, you have everything you need." Elena crossed her arms, staring at him. "Everything except freedom. I can't leave without a driver, without informing you first, without acting like the perfect wife whenever it's convenient for you. I agreed to this arrangement, but that doesn't mean you have the right to control every detail of my life." Tyler slowly set the newspaper down on the table and leaned back in his chair, observing Elena with an unreadable expression. I didn't realize you felt that way, he said, choosing his words carefully. To him, everything had been going smoothly. Elena hadn't shown signs of discomfort, and if he were honest with himself, he had started to enjoy her company at breakfast and dinner. The routine didn't feel as monotonous with her around. But now, seeing the evident frustration on her face, he realized he might have underestimated the situation. You knew exactly what you were getting into, Elena. I knew I had to pretend to be your wife, not that I had to follow rules like I'd signed a servitude contract. The silence between them was heavy until Tyler let out a long sigh. Fine. If you want freedom, then enjoy it, he said, returning to his coffee. But if you go out, let me know. We still have appearances to maintain. Elena opened her mouth to argue but was interrupted by Addison, who entered the room hurriedly, holding her phone. Tyler, the investor lunch was rescheduled. It's in an hour. And yes, Elena has to go with you. The board members want to get to know her better. Elena narrowed her eyes. You didn't mention this lunch. Tyler sighed, standing up. Because I didn't think I needed to inform you in advance. I assumed you could simply smile and play your role. Elena stood as well, crossing her arms. And who says I can't? She challenged, grabbing her purse. Let's see who can pretend better, dear husband. Tyler arched an eyebrow, a smirk forming on his lips. This should be interesting. The restaurant was one of the most sophisticated in the city, a meeting place for top executives and politicians. When Elena and Tyler arrived, all eyes turned toward them. The investors were already seated, and Elena quickly realized this wasn't just a casual lunch. It was a test. They wanted to determine if she was worthy of standing by Tyler Johnson's side. The initial interactions were formal. Elena remained composed, engaging in conversation with elegance and responding confidently whenever addressed. Then one of the senior directors leaned forward and asked, Elena, tell me, what is it like being married to such a demanding man like Tyler? He has always been known for being controlling at work. I imagine he must be just as difficult at home. A brief silence settled over the table. Tyler discreetly glanced at Elena, waiting to see how she would respond. Elena picked up her wine glass and smiled slightly before answering. Oh, but that's exactly what I love about him, she said, placing her hand over Tyler's. The way he plans everything, how he thinks through the smallest details. It makes me feel secure, knowing he always has everything under control. Tyler didn't move, but something in his eyes gleamed with a mix of surprise and admiration. She was playing the game just as well as he was. The director chuckled, satisfied with the response. So you two truly complement each other. Impressive. Elena gave Tyler's hand a gentle squeeze before releasing it and taking another sip of her wine. When lunch ended and the guests began to disperse, Tyler leaned toward her. You played that well, he murmured. Elena smirked slightly. Deep down, she was surprised to realize that a small part of her was pleased knowing Tyler had enjoyed the interaction. Not that it changed anything, but it was curious to see that despite his cold demeanor, he seemed to be growing accustomed to her presence. I thought you wanted the perfect wife. I'm just playing my part. Tyler studied her for a moment but said nothing. Instead, he extended his hand to help her up. Something between them was shifting, and neither of them knew whether it was an advantage or a danger. That night after dinner, Tyler hesitated for a moment before walking toward Elena's room. He knocked lightly on the door and waited. When he heard a muffled, "Come in," from the other side, he opened the door and found her in pajamas, sitting in an armchair with a book in her hands. It wasn't anything fancy, just a simple set, but for some reason, he found her incredibly beautiful like that. Quickly, he pushed the thought aside and maintained his controlled posture. Elena, I've been thinking this afternoon, he began, leaning against the doorframe. Everything has been going well between us at social events, and you've been doing a great job. But I realized you were right. I hadn't noticed how much I was restricting your freedom. Elena slowly closed the book and lifted her eyes to him, surprised by his admission. And why the sudden change of heart? She asked, arching an eyebrow. Tyler shrugged. I want to keep things fair. So tomorrow morning we'll pick out a car for you. That way you can move around without relying on the drivers. I'd just appreciate it if you let me know when you leave. I know your father lives in another town and you might want to visit him." Elena felt a slight tightening in her chest. Tyler mentioned her father without knowing the full truth, without realizing the true weight of that story. Before signing the contract, he had asked about her family, and she had only told him part of the truth. She had explained that after leaving Johnson Developers, she had been in a car accident with her family. Her mother and brother had passed away, and her father, unable to cope with the loss, had moved to the countryside to live with his brother. She held Tyler's gaze, trying to decipher the motive behind his gesture. Was he merely fulfilling his part of the agreement, or did he genuinely want to make things easier for her? "Thank you," she finally said, not prolonging the topic. Tyler nodded, observing her for a moment before stepping back. "Good night, Elena." She watched him until the door closed and let out a long sigh. Something about Tyler Johnson was changing, and that unsettled her more than it should. The next morning, Elena descended the stairs expecting just another routine day in their arrangement. But upon reaching the living room, she found Tyler on the phone, his expression serious. The moment he saw her, he hung up and turned to face her. "Pack your bags," he said bluntly. Elena frowned, crossing her arms. "What? Where are we going?" "I need to travel to deal with an issue at a new coastal development. And as my wife, you're coming with me. The investors expect to see that we're doing well," he explained, grabbing his suit jacket. "Oh, of course, nothing like a forced trip to show off a perfect marriage," she said sarcastically. "Just pack your things. We leave in an hour." Tyler sighed, feigning impatience as always. But as he turned away, a slight smirk played at the corner of his lips. He wouldn't admit it, but he found her irony amusing. Elena thought about protesting, but realized it would be useless. So she went upstairs and threw a few outfits into her suitcase. Despite her reluctance, a part of her welcomed the idea of escaping the suffocating mansion, even if it meant being stuck with Tyler for a few days. Hours later, they were on the road in Tyler's luxurious car. The silence between them was almost palpable, broken only by the soft hum of the radio. Elena watched the landscape change, trying to ignore the fact that she would be spending days with him with no escape. Tyler, on the other hand, felt unexpectedly at ease. He loved driving, but in the city, he rarely had the chance. His work required him to be constantly on his phone or tablet, solving problems before even reaching the office, which meant he was always driven by a chauffeur. Now, with his hands gripping the wheel and the open road ahead, he felt a rare sense of freedom, one without interruptions, meetings, or urgent decisions. After a while, she glanced at him and asked, "How long are we staying?" "As long as it takes to resolve the issues and ensure the investors are satisfied," he replied, keeping his eyes on the road. Elena scoffed. "You have an incredible talent for giving vague answers." Tyler smirked but said nothing. He knew this trip would be a test for both of them, and deep down, he was curious to see how Elena would handle being away from their predictable routine. She leaned back in her seat, watching as the ocean came into view on the horizon. Whatever happened on this trip, she had a feeling things would never be the same. When they arrived at the hotel, they were informed that only one suite was available. Elena raised an eyebrow and crossed her arms. "Great. And where do you plan on sleeping?" she asked, looking at Tyler. He shrugged. "The couch will do," he replied, taking the key from the receptionist and heading to the elevator. Inside the suite, the atmosphere felt tense. It was spacious and luxurious, but the fact that they had to share the space added an unspoken tension. Elena placed her suitcase near the bed and looked at Tyler, who was already settling onto the couch. "This doesn't make sense," she said, crossing her arms. "That bed is huge. You don't need to sleep on the couch." "Are you worried about me, Elena?" he teased, a smirk playing on his lips. She rolled her eyes. "I'm worried about your back. I don't want to have to carry you if you wake up stiff." She turned toward the bathroom. Tyler chuckled but accepted her reasoning. By the second night, he slept in the bed, always maintaining a respectable distance. Over the next few days, they attended meetings with investors and project engineers. Elena began noticing something she hadn't before. just how much confidence Tyler exuded. He spoke with authority, handled negotiations seamlessly, and always remained in control. She found herself admiring him. Tyler, in turn, couldn't ignore how naturally Elena engaged with people. She charmed investors effortlessly, something he, despite being a natural leader, couldn't do with such ease. During these meetings, a silent understanding grew between them. They exchanged glances that conveyed more than words. Tyler had only ever shared such a connection with Addison, his sister. But Elena wasn't his sister, and that made everything more complicated. One afternoon, they went to the beach. Elena wore a simple yet elegant bikini. Tyler, in swim shorts, caught her attention in a way she hadn't expected. "Do you work out?" she asked, trying to sound disinterested. Tyler let out a low chuckle. "The office building has a gym for executives. I work out 3 times a week. I used to run outdoors, but I haven't had time in years." Elena tilted her head, considering. "I think everything in life needs balance, Tyler. You're the president of the company. If you wanted, you could make time to run and do things you enjoy." He didn't respond immediately, but seemed thoughtful. They spent hours at the beach talking about the family business and Tyler's future plans. Elena listened attentively and always added insightful comments, which surprised Tyler. Her strategic vision was impressive, and he enjoyed hearing her perspective, something he rarely experienced with others. He realized he was genuinely interested in what she had to say about his company. Elena, for her part, felt comfortable with him. Their conversation flowed naturally, free from the usual tension. Away from their routines and public appearances, it was as if they had let their guards down slightly. The next morning, when Elena woke up, she saw Tyler entering the room, sweaty and slightly out of breath. "I didn't mean to wake you," he said, grabbing a towel. "I went for a run. You were right." Elena smiled, surprised yet pleased for him. On a quiet evening after dinner with investors, a comfortable silence settled between them. Tyler broke it by saying, "Sometimes when I walk past the hallway at home, I hear the TV on. What do you like watching at night?" Elena raised her eyebrows, surprised by the question. "Sorry, I don't mean to be intrusive, but I thought we could watch something together since it's too early to sleep," he added. She gave a small smile, considering. "I like Emily in Paris. It's a fun, light-hearted series full of romance and comedy. I'm pretty sure you'd hate it." Tyler chuckled. "Only one way to find out." Elena pressed play, and as the series unfolded, she explained a few details to him. Unexpectedly, they were just enjoying the moment. No power struggles, no pretense, just sharing a space. And somehow that was even more dangerous. Tyler was in his office, surrounded by stacks of reports, but his mind was elsewhere. He had always been focused on work, but that night, everything felt sluggish. It had been years since he had felt the urge to leave early. He wanted to be home. He picked up one of the reports and scanned the contents, but instead of focusing on the numbers, his mind wandered. What would Elena think about this? He wondered, holding the paper. It was just an excuse, of course. He wanted to see her. Without thinking too much, he closed his laptop and headed home. When he arrived, he found Elena sitting on the couch, watching TV with a concentrated expression. The room was lit only by the glow of the screen, and a tray of food rested on the coffee table. "Are you watching Emily in Paris again?" he asked, hanging his suit jacket over the back of the couch. Elena glanced at him and smirked. "No, this is another show. But if you want, I can put Emily in Paris back on," she said, trying to sound casual. Deep down, she wanted to watch anything with him. Tyler hesitated for a moment, then loosened his tie and sat beside her. "You can leave this one on. What's it about?" Elena was surprised, but explained the plot enthusiastically. As they watched, he asked questions, and to her surprise, even laughed at some moments. It was strange, but in a good way. The episode flew by, so they decided to watch another, and another. Without realizing it, they were binge-watching together. They even ordered dinner and ate in the living room, something Tyler never did. When the last episode ended, Tyler leaned back on the couch and sighed. "I've never done this before," he admitted, staring at the dark screen. "Just watching a show without thinking about work. It was nice to laugh a little. Elena smiled. We could start another one. I was thinking about watching Ted Lasso. They say it's really good, funny, and with an engaging story. We could watch it together a few times a week. What do you think? She hoped he would say yes, though she tried not to show it. Tyler was silent for a moment, then looked at her and nodded. I think that's a good idea. Elena's heart did a small leap. They said goodnight and went to their separate rooms. But that night, both of them had the distinct feeling that, without realizing it, they were creating a new routine together. Dinner at Tyler's grandfather's house was arranged to bring together family and a few close friends. The setting was sophisticated, with a long table decorated with impeccable floral arrangements and soft lighting that made the occasion even more elegant. Elena was used to formal situations, but she felt that this evening carried a different weight. Since their arrival, Tyler and Elena had stayed close, presenting the perfect couple everyone expected to see. They greeted guests, engaged in conversations, and exchanged glances from time to time, something that had almost become second nature between them. Then, in the middle of dinner, Patricia, Tyler's cousin, smiled mischievously and, out of nowhere, said, "You two make such a beautiful couple. I don't think anyone here has seen you kiss yet. Come on, give us a romantic moment." The table filled with excited murmurs and all eyes turned toward them. Elena felt her face warm. Tyler, on the other hand, remained composed, but there was something in his eyes, a flicker of challenge. "She's right, grandson," said Anthony, Tyler's grandfather, watching them closely. "A kiss to celebrate such a beautiful love." Elena looked at Tyler and saw the silent question in his eyes. They had no choice. They needed to keep up the act. So, he leaned in slowly, holding her face gently, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. When their lips met, what was supposed to be a simple kiss to impress the others lingered longer than it should have. The warmth of the moment wrapped around them. The world around them faded for a few seconds. It wasn't just a rehearsed kiss. It was real, and neither of them wanted to stop. When they finally pulled away, Elena could still feel the tingling on her lips. Tyler held her gaze for a brief moment before composing himself and turning his attention back to the table. The guests applauded and laughed, delighted by the scene, while Addison, Tyler's sister, watched them with an intrigued sparkle in her eyes. Tyler's grandfather observed the moment closely. He had seen many couples fake happiness to keep up appearances, but there was something genuine about that kiss. It wasn't just a performance for others. It carried intensity, sincerity. Anthony knew his grandson well and understood that Tyler wasn't someone easily swayed by emotions. Yet, in that brief moment, he saw something different, something real. Elena tried to focus on dinner, but her heart was racing too fast. Tyler, always so composed, seemed equally affected. Neither of them said a word, but in their minds, one question echoed. What was that? A few days after the dinner at his grandfather's house, Tyler still found himself thinking about the unexpected kiss. The thought unsettled him more than he wanted to admit. To avoid any awkward situations, he started spending more time at the office, working late into the night, using the endless reports as an excuse not to come home in time for dinner. He didn't know how to handle it. Every time he looked at Elena, the memory of the kiss resurfaced with intensity, disrupting his carefully structured mind. That night, Tyler arrived home even later than usual. As he walked through the silent corridor, he heard a muffled voice coming from the library. He knew Elena spent hours there, gradually transforming the space with her presence. Without realizing it, he liked it. The house felt less empty since she started leaving her mark on it. She brought life to the space in a subtle but meaningful way. She had placed vases of flowers around the rooms, rearranged some furniture to make the spaces feel cozier, and added small decorative details he would have never noticed before. For the first time, the estate didn't just feel like a place where he slept. It felt like a home. He paused at the slightly open door and realized she was on the phone. Her tone was tense, worried. "I know, doctor, but I can't give up now," Elena said. "My father doesn't deserve to pay for something he didn't do." "Yes, I know the legal battle is tough, but I will find the money to continue. Tyler frowned. He had unintentionally overheard more than he should have. When Elena hung up, exhaling deeply, he stepped into the room. "Who were you talking to?" he asked, his voice calm but firm. Elena turned around quickly, startled. "That's none of your business, Tyler," she replied, crossing her arms. He took a step closer, studying her. "It was a lawyer, wasn't it? About your father." Her gaze hardened. "I don't want to talk about this." Tyler sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Elena, I already know everything." She froze. "What?" "Before we signed the contract, I had to gather information about you. It was inevitable that I came across your father's case. The news was everywhere," he explained. "I've always known he was in prison." Elena felt a mix of relief and frustration. "And you never said anything?" "I thought about it many times," Tyler admitted. "Especially when you left on Sundays saying you were visiting your father in another town. I knew you were going to the prison, but I also knew you didn't want to talk about it, so I respected your silence." She bit her lip, processing his words. This wasn't the Tyler she once knew, the cold, arrogant businessman who ignored the emotions of others. This Tyler had done something few people ever did. He had respected her space. "And now? What do you want from this?" she asked, her voice less defensive. Tyler shrugged. "I want to help. I know an excellent lawyer, someone who can really make a difference in your father's case." Elena blinked, surprised. "You want to help? Why?" He held her gaze for a moment before answering. "Because I can. Because I know he's innocent. Before we signed the contract, I read everything about his case." She felt a lump in her throat. She had carried this burden alone for so long, never imagining that one day someone would offer to share it with her. I don't know what to say," she murmured. "Just accept it. Let me do this for you," Tyler said sincerely. Elena took a deep breath and, without thinking too much, stepped forward and hugged him. It was a rare, unexpected embrace, full of meaning. Tyler stood still for a moment, caught off guard. But then, slowly, he wrapped his arms around her, realizing that, for once, he was doing something that truly mattered to someone. And strangely, that made him feel good. A few days later, Elena was preparing to visit her father when she heard firm footsteps behind her. She turned and found Tyler already ready, holding the car keys. "What are you doing?" she asked, frowning, surprised to see him in jeans and a t-shirt. Though simple, the outfit suited him well, different from the seriousness of the suits he always wore. "Going with you," he replied as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. "Tyler, you don't have to do this," she said, crossing her arms. "I know, but I want to," he said firmly. "If I'm really going to help with your father's case, I need to understand everything. See it up close." Elena hesitated for a moment, but deep down she felt like she needed the company. She sighed and nodded. The drive to the prison was silent. Elena stared out the window, her thoughts swirling. She was used to this routine, but knowing Tyler would be there made her feel different. When they arrived, he took in the bleak, cold environment, the gray walls, the metallic sound of gates closing, the weary faces of visitors waiting to enter. Nothing about this place fit the world Tyler lived in. But when he looked at Elena, he saw that this place had been a part of her life for a long time. They were led to a visiting room. When Elena's father appeared, she smiled, trying to hide her emotions, but her eyes shone. "Hi, Dad." "My girl," the man said, smiling back and holding her hands across the table. Tyler observed in silence. Her father seemed like a dignified man, someone who didn't belong in this place. There was sadness in his eyes, but also strength. After a few minutes of conversation, the man looked at Tyler with curiosity. "And this is—" Elena hesitated slightly before answering. "Tyler, my husband." Tyler noticed her hesitation but simply extended his hand to shake the older man's. "Pleasure to meet you, Mr. Miller." The man shook his hand and nodded slowly. So, you're the man taking care of my daughter. Elena felt a tightness in her chest. Taking care wasn't exactly the right term, but for some reason she didn't correct her father. Tyler, for his part, met the man's gaze and answered sincerely. I'm trying. Elena's father gave a faint smile, as if he understood something that even the two of them hadn't realized yet. When the visit ended and they left the prison, Elena let out a long sigh, feeling the weight of the moment. Tyler, walking beside her, broke the silence. Your father is a strong man. She looked at him and smiled, though tiredly. He always has been. Tyler hesitated before adding, I understand why this means so much to you. You've lost a lot and had to handle everything on your own. I can't imagine what it's like to carry that pain every day and still keep going. That takes a kind of strength few people have. Elena lowered her eyes, feeling strangely exposed. Someone saw her pain without her needing to explain it. Tyler didn't just recognize the burden she carried. He acknowledged her strength. And in that moment, she realized that maybe she didn't have to face everything alone anymore. Even if they weren't a real couple, he was someone she could trust. The drive back from the prison was silent. Elena kept her eyes on the road, but her mind was elsewhere. Visiting her father always unsettled her, but this time, something else left her feeling uneasy. Tyler. His presence, his attentive gaze, his words. Everything about him disrupted her emotions in a way she wasn't ready to admit. When they arrived at the estate, Tyler turned off the engine and looked at her. Are you okay? He asked, his voice softer than usual. Elena took a moment before responding. I'm just tired, she lied. He nodded slowly but didn't seem convinced. They got out of the car and stepped inside, where the silence enveloped them. Tyler tossed the keys onto the table, looking just as pensive. Do you want to eat something? He asked. I can order something in. Elena shook her head. I'm not hungry. I think I'll take a shower and rest for a bit. She climbed the stairs without looking back, feeling his gaze on her. Once inside her room, she let out a long sigh and leaned against the door. What was happening to her? Since when did Tyler Johnson take up so much space in her thoughts? Downstairs, Tyler poured himself a glass of whiskey and stepped onto the balcony. The cool night breeze hit his face, but it did little to clear his thoughts. Since the start of this marriage of convenience, he had found himself thinking about her more and more. And today, seeing her so vulnerable, something inside him shifted. He wanted to help her. He wanted to be by her side in a way he couldn't yet define. After a few minutes, he climbed the stairs and walked down the corridor toward his room. But as he passed Elena's slightly open door, he heard a soft sigh. He hesitated, then knocked lightly. Elena? She opened the door slowly, already in her pajamas, her damp hair falling over her shoulders. Can't sleep? He asked. She gave a small, humorless smile. My mind won't stop. Tyler crossed his arms, leaning against the doorframe. Want to take a walk? Sometimes walking helps clear your thoughts. Elena hesitated for a moment. The idea of spending more time with him seemed unexpectedly appealing, something she would never have considered not long ago. I'll take you up on that. Let me change and I'll meet you downstairs. Tyler felt his heartbeat quicken and caught himself thinking, am I really excited about going for a walk? Yes, I am. A few moments later, they began strolling through the quiet streets of the neighborhood. At first, they walked in silence, but soon, Tyler started telling stories about the area and the neighbors. He spoke about his childhood, his memories of the place, and without realizing it, he let slip. I want to raise my kids here. Elena stopped and looked at him, surprised. Kids? How many do you want? Tyler realized he had spoken without thinking and glanced away, slightly embarrassed. Then, to lighten the moment, he joked, Oh, I don't know. I suppose I'd have to check with my wife, he said, flashing her a playful look. Elena blushed and smiled, unsure how to respond, but she liked his answer. The conversation flowed more easily after that. She felt calmer, lighter in his presence. As they crossed the street, Tyler instinctively took her hand, and instead of letting go, he kept holding it. His touch was firm yet comfortable. Neither of them commented on it. They just kept walking, hand in hand, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. And from that night on, whether strolling through empty streets or attending crowded events, Tyler and Elena were always holding hands. A few weeks had passed. The interactions between Tyler and Elena had subtly changed. Small gestures, lingering glances, a closeness and intimacy that hadn't existed before. And then, that night, another Johnson Developers event awaited them. The event was another formal affair, an elegant cocktail party filled with business executives, investors, and influential figures. Elena had grown accustomed to attending these gatherings with Tyler, but something about this night felt different. Maybe it was the way he looked at her, or maybe it was the presence of Thais Santoro. As soon as they entered the ballroom, Elena noticed the woman approaching with a calculated smile. Dressed in a fitted, flawless gown, Thais exuded confidence and hidden intentions. "Tyler," she said, her voice overly sweet. "What a surprise to see you here. And accompanied, of course." Elena remained composed, but she couldn't ignore the discomfort creeping up on her. Thais turned to her with an appraising look. "Elena, dear," she continued, smiling, "I imagine you're enjoying your new position. Being married to a man like Tyler, it must be a unique experience." Elena met her gaze without backing down. "Oh yes, Thais. It's been quite intense," she replied with a small smile, refusing to show any insecurity. Thais let out a forced laugh, then casually placed a hand on Tyler's arm, as if ignoring Elena entirely. "Funny how time changes people, doesn't it, Tyler?" Thais said, twirling a strand of her hair in deliberate provocation. "You were always so free, so sure that commitments weren't for you. What changed?" Tyler regarded Thais for a moment as if analyzing her words, but then his gaze dropped to the hand she had placed on his arm. With a firm, definitive motion, he removed it. Without hesitation, he turned to Elena and, as if the decision had been made long ago, wrapped an arm securely around her waist, pulling her close. "Sometimes all we need is someone who shows us what truly matters," he said, his eyes locked on Elena's, as if Thais had ceased to exist. Elena's heart raced. The way he said it, the firm touch at her waist, nothing about it felt like an act. Thais forced a smile, but her eyes betrayed her irritation. "How lovely," she said, her tone sharp. "I hope it stays that way, for both of you." She walked away, but the tension lingered in the air. Tyler sighed and looked at Elena. "Let's get out of here. I don't want to waste the rest of the night listening to pointless provocations." Elena nodded, and they left the ballroom hand in hand, taking the elevator up to the rooftop terrace, which had a breathtaking view of the city. The cool night breeze brushed against their skin, but it wasn't colder than the wave of emotions Elena was trying to process. "Thanks for getting me out of there," she said, leaning against the railing. Tyler stepped closer, his hand still resting on her waist. "I wanted to make it clear to her that my past doesn't matter anymore," he said bluntly. Elena looked up at him. "And what is your present, Tyler?" He was silent for a moment, just watching her. Then, as if something inside him finally gave way, he slid a hand to the nape of her neck and pulled her into a kiss. This time there was no audience, no pretense, it was real. The kiss started slow but quickly deepened, filled with everything neither of them had dared to admit. Elena lost herself in the moment, feeling the warmth of his hands holding her as if he had no intention of letting go. When they finally parted, both were breathless. Elena looked at him, unsure of what to say. Tyler traced his fingers gently over her face, a rare, genuine smile playing on his lips. "My present is you." Elena's heart pounded, but before she could respond, Tyler took her hand and led her back to the elevator. "Let's go home." They returned home, and what happened next was inevitable. As soon as they stepped inside, Tyler pulled Elena into another kiss, this time without hesitation, without barriers. His hands slid around her waist, and she tangled her fingers in his hair, letting the heat of the moment consume them entirely. They ascended the stairs between kisses and breathless laughter, stopping in front of Elena's bedroom door. There, they paused, both fully aware of what would happen next. Tyler brushed his fingers over her face and asked, his voice husky, "Are you sure?" Elena nodded, her eyes glowing with desire and anticipation. "Yes. And you?" He smiled, that rare, sincere smile that left her breathless. "I've wanted this for days." And Elena truly felt wanted. When they finally crossed the doorway, everything happened naturally. Their passion was both intense and tender, filled with emotions unspoken, but deeply felt. Neither of them needed to put into words what was happening. That night, their bodies spoke for them. Between whispers and caresses, Elena realized something that both thrilled and terrified her. It wasn't just desire. It was something more. Something that made her heart race every time Tyler looked at her like she was the only person in the world. And this time, something between them had changed forever. Helena woke up to the soft morning light filtering through the bedroom curtains. It took her a few seconds to get her bearings until she felt the warmth beside her. Tyler was still asleep, his chest rising and falling in a steady rhythm. She had the chance to observe him without the mask of the ruthless businessman. He looked different like this, more relaxed, more human. A man who, last night, not only desired her, but made her feel special. She smiled softly, warmth spreading through her chest at the realization. Moving carefully so as not to wake him, she slipped out of bed and put on a robe. She needed coffee. She needed to process everything. When she went downstairs to the kitchen and started brewing coffee, she heard footsteps behind her. Turning around, she found Tyler, already dressed casually, his hair slightly tousled, but with that intense gaze that made her breath hitch. "You left the bed without waking me," he said, a half smile playing on his lips. "I thought you needed to rest," she replied, trying to sound natural. He stepped closer and grabbed a cup, pouring himself some coffee before looking at her. "And you? Did you get any rest?" he asked, his voice carrying a meaning that needed no explanation. Elena felt her cheeks warm but held his gaze. "Yes, it was a good night." Tyler smirked slightly and without a word reached up and brushed a strand of hair from her face. The touch was subtle but full of intent. They drank their coffee together, exchanging glances and casual touches that now felt natural. Neither of them directly mentioned the previous night, but the tension between them was there, palpable and inevitable. The day passed without much discussion about what they were feeling. Tyler followed his usual work routine, while Elena tried to focus on her own projects. For the past few days, an idea had been forming in her mind. With the money she would receive at the end of the contract with Tyler, besides buying her own home, she wanted to start a small business. Elena had always had an analytical mind and an eye for details that others overlooked. Her passion for investigation led her to envision an office specializing in business auditing and intelligence. Her focus would be on helping companies identify internal irregularities, such as contract fraud, resource misallocation, supplier issues, and unethical behavior from directors and employees. Determined to turn this idea into reality, she spent hours studying the market, analyzing cases of companies that had faced crises due to a lack of transparency, and researching the best tools to structure her business. She created a solid plan, mapped out strategic partnerships, and began identifying potential first clients. More than just a project, this was her chance to rebuild her professional trajectory and achieve the independence she had always desired. This time, she wasn't just surviving, she was creating something significant, something entirely her own. That night after dinner, Tyler found her in the living room watching a series. Without saying a word, he sat beside her, and after a few minutes, draped an arm around her shoulders, pulling her close. "Is the episode good?" he asked, as if it was the most natural thing in the world. Elena smiled, leaning against him. "It is. but I think I'm enjoying the company even more." He chuckled softly and kissed the top of her head. They stayed like that for a while, until, as the episode ended, Elena turned to him. Their eyes met. The desire was there, mixed with something deeper, something neither of them dared to name yet. Tyler traced his fingers along her face and, in a slow movement, kissed her. This time there was no hesitation. The kiss started slow but quickly deepened. His hands explored her waist, pulling her closer, while Elena tangled her fingers in his hair. When they pulled away, both were breathless. Tyler rested his forehead against hers and smiled. "I think we're forming a habit." Elena laughed, keeping her eyes closed. "I think so too." Without needing to say anything else, he took her hand and led her to the bedroom. And that night, they gave themselves to each other once again, with the certainty that something inside them had already changed completely. The following days were marked by a subtle but intense shift between Tyler and Elena. Everything seemed the same, yet different. The touches, the lingering glances, the way he held her hand without any apparent reason, the ease with which they fell asleep together every night and woke up side by side. But as right as it felt, something inside Elena screamed in warning. Was what they were experiencing real, or just a consequence of the agreement they had made? The contract still existed. Only 3 months remained until its end. And when it was over, she would leave. What would happen then? She tried to push these thoughts away while reviewing her plans for her investigative business. But even as she immersed herself in research, her mind kept drifting back to Tyler, the way he looked at her, as if he were discovering feelings he didn't even know he had. And that scared her. Tyler, on the other hand, also felt the weight of this new reality. He spent his days at the office, but his focus was far from reports and meetings. Every decision he made came with an inevitable question: what would happen when the contract ended? One evening, he arrived home earlier than usual and found Elena sitting on the couch, a book in her lap, but her gaze fixed on some distant point. There was something different about her, a weight in her expression that he recognized because he carried the same one. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, sitting beside her. Elena took a moment to answer. "What happens after?" she finally said without pretense. Tyler held his breath for a moment. He knew this conversation would come, but he hadn't expected it to be this difficult. Elena, as always, was direct and unfiltered, bringing to light the truth he had been trying to avoid. "Do you want to leave?" he asked, his voice quieter than he intended. Elena turned to him, her eyes shimmering with uncertainty and something deeper. "It's not about wanting or not wanting. I just don't know what's real here, what we are, truly, and what was created out of necessity." Tyler took her hand, intertwining their fingers. "What if I told you that for me this has always been real?" he said, his voice steady but carrying vulnerability. Elena's heart pounded. Every part of her wanted to believe him, but fear still lingered. "What if it's just the comfort of our routine? What if it's only because we're here, together, every day?" she whispered. Tyler gently ran his thumb over her skin and took a deep breath before replying. "What if it's not?" Elena's eyes welled up with tears she refused to let fall. Without saying another word, she leaned in, resting her head on his shoulder. Tyler closed his eyes and held her tightly, as if anchoring her to him. The silence between them wasn't one of distance, but of fear, the fear of realizing that they were far beyond a contract. Tyler inhaled deeply, as if gathering the courage to say something he had been holding back for days. Then, he cupped Elena's face in his hands and looked into her eyes, unwavering. "I've never felt anything like this before," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "I'm in love with you, Elena. With everything. The way you speak your mind, the way you concentrate when you're focused, the way you brighten this house without even realizing it." Elena held her breath, her heart hammering in her chest. "I know this might seem sudden or confusing, but I don't want this to end with a contract. I want it to be real. I want us to get to know each other for who we are, without deadlines, without agreements," he continued, still holding her hands. "That's why I'm asking you on a first date." She blinked, surprised. A first date? After everything? He smiled, pulling her closer. I want to do this the right way. I want to take you out to dinner, talk with no obligations. I want you to choose to be with me because you feel the same, not because a piece of paper put us in each other's path. Elena bit her lip, trying to suppress the smile threatening to appear. And where would this date be? She asked, feigning nonchalance. The restaurant at the Central Hotel. You loved the city view that night at the directors' meeting. I want to see you there again, but this time as a real couple. She felt her heart race, but there was no denying it anymore. She wanted this too. All right, Tyler, let's do this the right way. He smiled, and for the first time there were no doubts between them. Only the certainty that what they had was real. The restaurant at the Central Hotel was impeccable that night. Soft lighting, elegantly arranged tables, and a panoramic view of the city glowing in the background. It was the same place where Elena had once admired the cityscape, but this time it felt different. She was here for a real date, and with Tyler. When she entered the restaurant, she found him waiting near their reserved table. He had come straight from the office but had made sure to look his best. He wore a perfectly tailored dark suit, yet there was a newfound ease in his posture. His eyes lit up with admiration as they traced her silhouette. You look stunning, he said, pulling out a chair for her. Elena smiled, feeling a different kind of warmth at his compliment. And you look very elegant. But I must admit, I prefer you in jeans and a t-shirt, she teased, making him chuckle. They ordered wine and dinner began. Between light conversations and intense glances, everything felt natural, as if they had been doing this for years. Elena found herself laughing easily, and Tyler, who was usually so focused on control, was relaxed, simply enjoying her company. Across the restaurant, seated discreetly at a more secluded table, Anthony and Addison observed the scene. Tyler's grandfather held a glass of wine, his gaze fixed on the couple before him. Addison, beside him, smiled. I told you, she murmured. Their marriage may not have started traditionally, but look at them now. Anthony didn't respond immediately. He saw the way Tyler looked at Elena, with something far beyond admiration. He saw the way she smiled at him, completely immersed in the moment. And in that instant, he knew. His grandson wasn't pretending. The love between them was real. Back at Tyler and Elena's table, dinner stretched into the night. When dessert arrived, Tyler took her hand over the table, gently tracing circles with his thumb. I don't know how I spent so much time without realizing what was right in front of me, he admitted, his voice lower, more intimate. But now that I have, I don't want to ignore it anymore. Elena's heart raced. And what have you realized? He smiled, leaning in slightly closer. That I'm completely in love with you. She bit her lip, smiling, feeling happier than she ever imagined she would upon hearing those words. What a coincidence, she murmured. I'm completely in love with you too. Tyler chuckled softly, then, without caring about the people around them, cupped her face and kissed her. It was an intense kiss, filled with silent promises. There was no more contract, no more doubts. Across the restaurant, Anthony set his wine glass down with a quiet sigh. I think this time Tyler has truly found what he needed, he said. Addison smiled and raised her glass. Finally. And as the city shimmered around them, Tyler and Elena sealed the beginning of something real. The next day, life returned to routine. But now everything felt different. Tyler and Elena were officially together, and happiness was written all over their faces. But then something happened. During a meeting at Johnson Developers, one of the directors rushed into the room, his expression grim. Tyler, you need to see this, he said, tossing a tablet onto the table. Tyler frowned and picked up the device. When he saw the headline, a chill ran down his spine. Ex-employee sues Johnson Developers for fraud and manipulation. Below the title, a photo of Thais Santoro, and a series of serious accusations against the company. He closed his eyes for a moment and took a deep breath. He knew Thais wouldn't accept being left behind, but he hadn't expected her to go this far. Elena walked into the room at the scheduled time, as she and Tyler had planned to have lunch together. However, the moment she stepped through the door, she immediately sensed the tension in the air. "What happened?" she asked, noticing Tyler's hardened expression. He looked at her, gripping the tablet tightly. "Looks like we have a problem, and we're going to have to solve it together." Elena took the tablet from his hands and quickly scanned the article. When she finished, she met his gaze, determined. "Then let's end this together." And so, once again, Elena and Tyler prepared to face a new challenge, side by side. Tyler and Elena spent the following days immersed in meetings with lawyers and company directors. The lawsuit filed by Thais was not just an attack on Johnson developers, but also a personal attempt to harm them. The media began speculating about the scandal, putting the company's reputation at risk. But Tyler wouldn't let that slide. "We need concrete proof that she's lying," Tyler said as he analyzed the case documents with his legal team. "I've already started looking," Elena replied firmly, sliding a few folders across the table. "Thais was meticulous, but she made the mistake of underestimating me. And I don't lose to those who play dirty." Tyler watched her with admiration as she opened the documents and explained with precision how she had tracked suspicious transactions and found inconsistencies in financial reports that linked Thais to the scheme. Every detail made sense, every point was supported by concrete evidence. "You managed to get all this in such a short time?" he asked, impressed. Elena lifted her gaze and smirked. "I learned from the best," she said, meeting his eyes. Tyler felt an unexpected pride swell inside him. Without thinking too much, he slid his hand around her waist and placed a light kiss on her temple, a spontaneous gesture that even surprised the lawyers in the room. "I knew you were brilliant," he murmured before turning back to the documents with renewed determination. "Now, let's put an end to this, once and for all." After days of intense investigation, it was Elena who made the most significant discovery. While reviewing financial records and cross-referencing information with the legal team, she uncovered incriminating emails and suspicious transactions linking Thais directly to a data manipulation scheme within the company. With her sharp instincts, she realized that Thais's accusations were nothing more than a well-orchestrated ploy to target Tyler. Additionally, messages exchanged between Thais and a journalist revealed that the entire lawsuit against Johnson developers was an act of revenge following the end of their relationship. Tyler watched as Elena laid out every detail with impressive clarity, and his pride in her grew with each piece of evidence she presented. "You dismantled her entire plan," he said, looking at Elena with genuine admiration. "And you did it better than any investigator I could have hired. The lawyers here are impressed with you." Elena lifted her gaze, determined. "I told you she wouldn't get away with this." With the evidence in hand, Tyler decided to act without hesitation. "I want a meeting with Thais, and I want Elena there with me," he declared firmly. The meeting was set in a discreet conference room within Johnson Developers. When Thais arrived, dressed impeccably and wearing a triumphant look, she was greeted by Tyler and Elena, both seated with paperwork spread before them. "I'm glad you called me," Thais said with a fake smile. "I assumed you wanted to negotiate, but I didn't expect Elena to be here. After all, she's not part of the company, just your wife." Tyler leaned slightly forward, his expression growing even more serious. "Elena is with me in everything, Thais," he said, his voice firm but laden with meaning. "She's not just my wife. She's my partner, someone with the intelligence and courage to sit exactly where she is. And honestly, she understands more about this company than you ever could." Thais's eyes narrowed slightly, but she kept up her facade. "How sweet. A marriage that came out of nowhere and turned into real love," she mocked, attempting to mask her unease. Tyler smirked, but his gaze held a determined glint. "Yes, and that's what bothers you, isn't it? That unlike you, Elena never needed to manipulate anything to be essential to me." Tyler crossed his arms, unfazed. "And by the way, there's no negotiation, Thais. We know exactly what you did." She raised an eyebrow, feigning indifference. "Oh, please, Tyler. You've always been smart, but you can't prove anything against me. Elena, who had been silently observing, opened a folder and slid some documents across the table. "Are you sure about that?" she asked, meeting Thais's gaze. Tyler's ex-girlfriend grabbed the papers and skimmed through them quickly. Her expression shifted upon seeing the incriminating messages and evidence of the fraud she had orchestrated. Her confident demeanor faltered for a brief moment, but she quickly recovered and glared at Elena with disdain. "So this is it? The new Mrs. Johnson thinks she can take me on?" she sneered, trying to conceal her nervousness. Elena leaned slightly forward, holding her gaze steady. "This isn't about me. It's about the truth. And the truth is that you tried to destroy the company out of revenge. But now it's over, Thais." Tyler smirked, satisfied to see Elena standing her ground against Thais as an equal. "You have two options," he continued, crossing his arms. "Either you drop the charges and disappear, or I take this to court, exposing everything we found. And then, besides losing your credibility, you might end up behind bars." A heavy silence filled the room. Thais pressed her lips together, glancing from Tyler to Elena. "This isn't over," she finally said, but her voice lacked its usual arrogance. "For you it is," Elena shot back, unwavering. Thais stood up, grabbed her purse, and stormed out, slamming the door behind her. Tyler let out a long breath and turned to Elena. "You were incredible," he said, admiring her. She smiled, still feeling the adrenaline of the moment. She couldn't walk away unpunished. Tyler took her hand and gave it a gentle squeeze. "Thank you for standing by me in this." Elena intertwined her fingers with his. "Always." Standing together, they realized they were stronger than ever. Tyler squeezed Elena's hand with pride, and with a smile added, "If you manage to dismantle Thais's plan like this, imagine how successful your investigative firm will be. You're brilliant at everything you do, Elena." She smiled, surprised by his spontaneous compliment, feeling warmth spread through her chest. It wasn't just his support, it was the certainty that Tyler truly believed in her. More than that, he admired her. Days passed, and besides the professional challenges, Elena was still dealing with the legal battle for her father. But now, there was hope. She and Tyler were sitting in the living room when Elena's phone vibrated on the table. Seeing the name of her father's defense attorney on the screen, her heart raced. With slightly trembling hands, she answered and put it on speaker so Tyler could hear as well. "I have good news," the attorney said. "We managed to present the new evidence, and the judge has agreed to reevaluate the case. With this, there's a strong chance your father will be acquitted. The sentence could be reviewed in the coming months." Elena placed a hand on her chest, feeling her heartbeat quicken. Is this real?" Her voice was shaky. "Yes, Elena. Now we have a solid case. We're close to getting him the justice he deserves." She looked at Tyler, her eyes shining with emotion. He smiled and took her hand, squeezing it gently. "I told you we'd figure this out," he said. A tear rolled down Elena's cheek, but this time it was out of relief. "Thank you. Thank you for being with me through this, Tyler." He kissed her hand and smiled. "Always." The contract was coming to an end. Only a few weeks remained, and Elena was trying to focus on the new phase of her life. Her investigative firm was taking shape, and she was close to finalizing the purchase of her house. But despite everything, a weight lingered. What if Tyler didn't ask her to stay? What if, to him, this was just a chapter that would close along with the contract? Tyler, on the other hand, was restless. He loved Elena, but even though his actions had made it clear, he had never said it out loud. And now, he felt he needed to. That night after dinner, Elena sat on the balcony, watching the city lights. Tyler approached, bringing 2 glasses of wine. "What are you thinking about?" he asked, handing her a glass. Elena hesitated before answering. "The future," she said honestly. Tyler studied her for a moment, then took a deep breath. "I know I've never said this clearly, but I need to say it now. I don't want you to leave, Elena. I don't want this to end." She looked at him surprised. He sat beside her and took her hand. "I love you. I love you completely, for who you are. I want to be by your side, see you achieve your dreams, build your company. I want to be with you because nothing in my life makes sense without you. Elena felt a lump in her throat, her eyes welling with tears. I love you too, Tyler. He smiled, running his fingers along her face. Then stay with me. But this time, no contracts, no obligations. Just because we want to. Because we love each other. She let out a soft laugh, emotional. I'll stay. Tyler kissed her with all the intensity of someone who knew, at that moment, that he finally had everything he needed. When they pulled apart, he gently ran his hand over her face and smiled. There's something else I want to say, he added, looking into her eyes. We sleep together every night, sometimes in your room, sometimes in mine. And I like that. I like waking up next to you every morning. So I was thinking, what if you moved into my room? Elena blinked, surprised. Move into your room? She repeated, a smile forming on her lips. Tyler nodded. Your room is beautiful, but mine is bigger, has a spacious closet, a better bathroom. You can bring your clothes, your things. That way, neither of us has to keep moving back and forth. I want that space to be ours. I want to wake up and see you next to me without needing to go somewhere else. I want every detail of that space to reflect both of us. I think we're ready for this. Elena felt warmth spread through her heart. His request wasn't just about sharing a space. It was about fully embracing the life they were building together. She admired him even more for the way he thought about her. I've been feeling the same way, she admitted, smiling. I love sleeping next to you every night. It feels like part of me now. Tyler took her hand and squeezed it gently. So it's official? You'll share the room with me? Yes, she replied, her eyes shining. I want to take this step with you. Tyler smiled and pulled Elena in for another kiss, sealing yet another milestone in the life they were creating together. The next day, Tyler received an unexpected visitor at his office. His grandfather, Anthony, walked in with his usual firm stride and took a seat in front of his grandson. You've changed, Anthony said directly, and I have to admit, I'm really proud of you. Tyler raised his eyebrows, surprised. That's rare to hear, Grandpa, he joked. Anthony gave a slight smile and nodded. You've become a man who knows what he wants, who understands the value of the company, but also the value of the people around him. Because of that, I've made a decision. You will remain as president of Johnson Developers. Tyler took a deep breath, feeling a wave of gratitude, but then hesitated. Thank you, Grandpa. That means a lot to me. But I wanted to ask you something. Anthony frowned, curious. What is it? Tyler rested his elbows on the desk, thoughtful. I want you to take over as president for a few months. His grandfather remained silent for a moment. And why is that? Tyler smiled slightly. Because I feel like living, enjoying life. I want to be with Elena, travel with her, help her with her investigative firm. I really love her, Grandpa. I've never felt this way before. I'm not abandoning the company, but I want to find balance. I need this time. Anthony observed him for a few seconds, then let out a soft sigh and crossed his arms. You know, Tyler, I've always been a tough man. Success was always my priority, but now I see that you've found something I never had. Balance. I loved your grandmother, but work always came first. And in the end, I lost too much time. I'm happy to see that you're doing things differently. Tyler felt a tightness in his chest upon hearing that. So, do you accept? His grandfather nodded, a rare smile appearing on his lips. Go live, Tyler. I'll hold things down here. Tyler stood up and hugged his grandfather, a rare but genuine gesture between them. Thank you for everything. Don't thank me, Anthony said, giving a light pat on his grandson's back. Just make sure to give me great-grandchildren one day. I need more heirs for this company. Tyler laughed, shaking his head. We'll see what the future holds. And for the first time, he truly allowed himself to think about it. A future with Elena, without deadlines, without contracts. Just love and the freedom to live. The days passed with ease, and Tyler and Elena cherished every moment together. But deep down, he knew there was still something he needed to do. Something definitive. Something that would show Elena that their future was only just beginning. Tyler planned everything carefully. That evening, he invited her to a special dinner, without revealing any details. He simply asked her to trust him. When Elena stepped out of the bedroom in an elegant blue dress, Tyler felt his heart race. She had always been beautiful, but now there was something different. She was his. Not by contract, not by obligation, but because they chose each other every single day. "You look stunning," he said, offering his arm to her. They drove to a destination Elena didn't immediately recognize. As he drove, Tyler felt a slight smile form on his lips. Over the past few months, he had changed a lot. Now, he made sure to drive whenever he could, enjoying the moments to listen to music or an interesting podcast, something that once seemed like a waste of time in his fast-paced routine. He had also resumed his habit of running 4 times a week, feeling a sense of freedom he hadn't experienced in years. These small changes made him realize that finally, he was truly living, not just working, not just accumulating success and wealth, but living, truly appreciating each moment. When they arrived, Elena's eyes widened as she recognized the place. It was a luxurious rooftop terrace atop an iconic building in the city. Candles illuminated the setting, and an elegantly set table awaited them under a sky full of stars. "Tyler, this is—" She looked around, mesmerized. "Incredible. Did you book the entire restaurant just for us?" He smiled, amused by the question. "Of course. I wanted this night to be special. Just us, no distractions. Just the moment I've been waiting for." He pulled out a chair for her to sit. "You deserve the best, Elena. You always have." As they enjoyed dinner, Tyler intertwined his fingers with hers and took a deep breath, as if organizing his thoughts before speaking. "I've been thinking a lot about us, about everything we've been through," he began, looking directly at her. "And I realized that I want more than just sharing a routine with you. I want to experience new things by your side, without rush, without obligations." Elena raised an eyebrow, intrigued. "What exactly are you saying?" He smiled slightly, swirling his wine glass between his fingers. "I want to step away from the company for a while. Not forever, but long enough for us to travel together, enjoy time without worries. You've always been by my side, helping with everything. Now, I want to give that back to you. I want to see you thrive with your investigative firm. I want to be by your side on that journey." Elena's heart pounded. He was willing to take the next step, to consciously choose life with her, without hesitation. "Tyler, you'd really do that?" she asked, her voice full of emotion. He gently cupped her face and nodded. "I've never been so sure of anything in my life." Dinner continued with laughter, deep gazes, and unspoken declarations. But when dessert was served, Tyler grew serious for a moment, taking her hand in his. "For a long time, I thought I had everything: power, success, wealth. But in reality, I had nothing. Not until you came into my life and showed me what really matters," he said, taking a deep breath, gathering courage. "I don't just want a future with you. I want that future to start now, for real." Elena's heart pounded faster. Tyler stood up, pulled a small velvet box from his pocket, and knelt before her. "Elena Miller, I love you. You are the most incredible woman I have ever met, and I don't want to spend another day without knowing that you'll be by my side forever. Will you marry me? No contracts, no agreements, just love, just us?" Tears filled Elena's eyes and a joyful smile took over her lips. Who would have thought they would end up here? That their cold, calculated agreement would lead to the most sincere love she had ever known. She loved him in a way that was deep, genuine, a feeling that had grown without her even realizing it, becoming a part of who she was. Everything they had been through, the challenges, the doubts, the transformations, and now they were exactly where they were meant to be, not by obligation, but by choice, with their whole hearts. "Yes, Tyler. 1,000 times yes," she said, laughing and crying at the same time. Tyler slipped the ring onto her finger and pulled her into a deep, passionate kiss. The city sparkled around them, but nothing mattered more than that moment. This time, it was real. This time, it was forever. I hope you felt connected to every moment of this story, filled with passion, challenges, and unexpected twists. Following Helena and Tyler's journey, from a marriage based on a simple contract to the discovery of true love, showed us that destiny can surprise even the most guarded hearts. I hope you felt connected to every moment of this story, filled with passion, challenges, and unexpected twists. Following Helena and Tyler's journey, from a marriage based on a simple contract to the discovery of true love, showed us that destiny can surprise even the most guarded hearts. If this story touched your heart and you want to experience more intense and emotional narratives, like the video and subscribe to the Stories for You channel. Here, every story is created to move and inspire, bringing deep reflections on love, redemption, and new beginnings. Leave a comment sharing your thoughts on Helena and Tyler's story, and suggest new ideas for future stories. Your engagement is essential for us to keep bringing unforgettable narratives to life. Thank you so much for watching, and see you in the next story.